Chapter 92. Heh, Sister Ling, we really are sisters with tacit understanding, haha. Who's the sister of a pervert like you, haha, don't be shy. In the main room, Wang Lu laughed heartily. At the same time, he exerted his strength to move his body, which was suppressed by the truth spell, and gradually regained his senses. However, the 3 consecutive incantations just now were indeed no small matter. Without the sword of Mount Kuan in his hand, he couldn't use the non-phase law-breaking sword, which was his only hope to resist it. The 3 incantations were tantamount to covering his body without any hindrance. Thanks to the solid cultivation of his non-phase sword bone and non-phase golden bell shield, he was not directly shocked to death by the true word technique. If it was a 4 stars emissary who was at the peak of chi refining stage, he would probably be half dead from the shock. This was how difficult it was to challenge someone of a higher cultivation level, especially one of a higher cultivation level. The difference between them could be described as the difference between heaven and earth. The strength of a foundation establishment cultivator was clearly displayed. Wang Lu sighed. Foundation building cultivator, why are you so cool? Loser my ass, you're the loser. This guy is a disgrace to the foundation establishment stage. If it's a foundation establishment stage from the Spirit Sword Mountain, a single incantation from him would be enough to crush you. While tying up the unconscious old cultivator with a rope, the lady boss unceremoniously launched a slanderous offensive against Wang Lu. Both of them were Spirit Sword sex disciples, but if a dignified foundation establishment cultivator faced an opponent who didn't have a sword in his hand and whose cultivation base was a whole realm lower than him, and couldn't use a spell to stop him, that would be a shame. Humph, if it wasn't for me, you'd just be waiting to be trampled to death by this old pervert. What true disciple jumping levels to challenge others? What a joke. Wang Lu used the non-phase emperor bone to move all the bones in his body, returning to normal from his current mimicry form. At the same time, he retorted to the lady boss' irresponsible remarks, I didn't even bring my main weapon, okay? This time, I snuck in as bait to fight for an opportunity for you. You have the nerve to criticize me? If it were you alone, would you be able to deal with this guy? He had long been trapped by his array formation. But you don't have to worry about being ravaged by him, you have a flat chest. She doesn't like you. F***ck, if you talk about flat chests again, I'll break off our friendship. Alright, if you have the time to quarrel with me, hurry up and go. Have you settled the other 4-star? The lady boss snapped, do I need you to tell me that? When I snuck in, the first thing I did was get rid of that slut. Luckily I was quick, otherwise I wouldn't have been able to save you in time. Hey, don't make yourself out to be a lone hero, okay? If I didn't attract that dirty old man's attention from the front, could you have easily sneaked in? Even if you have the vacuum ability, you can't do it, right? Let's split the work and work together. You and I will share half of the credit, okay? The lady boss snorted. Up to you. Who cares for such worthless merits? You're just a trifling third-rate foundation establishment. Look at how proud you are. Of course, Wang Lu was proud. It wasn't because he and the lady boss had defeated an opponent whose cultivation was far higher than his, but because, with a 6-star captive, how could they still find the 7-star sect's headquarters? As a sect elder, his weight was already heavy enough. If he could bring him back to the village, this task could be considered completed. Although deep in his heart, Wang Lu didn't think that bringing back an elder could solve the Wang family village's problem, but, who are you? While Wang Lu was lost in thought, that dirty old man also woke up. A foundation establishment stage cultivator's body was much stronger than a chi cultivating stage cultivator's. However, after being hit by the lady boss's fist, his entire jade mansion almost fell apart, and his mind also suffered a heavy blow. Although his mind recovered, he simply couldn't mobilize even a trace of magical power. He was like a cripple. The rope that the lady boss tied around his body was very casual. Usually, he could break it with just one finger, but this time, he unexpectedly couldn't break free. However, the silver lining in the misfortune was that the lady boss's fist not only scattered his mind and the magical power in his jade mansion, but also extinguished the raging fire of lust. Although the price of this was that his skill would regress for at least a few years, it was still better than cultivation, deviation and self-immolation. Why did you sneak attack me? What enmity do I have with you? The lady boss frowned. So annoying, listening to this dirty old man talk. I feel like it will dirty my ears. I'm going to the back, you two perverts can chat. Damn. I'm a dignified handsome man, how could I be a pervert? A woman wearing a skirt to seduce a perverted old man is not qualified to defend herself. TSK, a 30-something flat-chested woman is qualified to accuse others? Forget it, I'm too lazy to bother with you. The lady boss pouted and directly went to the back room. Only Wang Lu and the old man were left. Wang Lu leaned forward. Do you recognize my face? The dirty old man was just hit until he was dizzy and his vision blurred. However, after gawking for a moment, he exclaimed, Wang Lu. Oh, it seems like you recognize me. So, what do you think now? I surrender. The dirty old man was, after all, a foundation establishment cultivator with rich experience. His mind quickly turned through countless thoughts and made a wise judgment. No matter how he was defeated, or what was going on with that inexplicable girl, in short, the current situation was completely out of his control, and the opponent's strength was far beyond his expectation. To be honest, he somewhat believed the conjecture put forward by the other elders in the previous meeting at the main altar. Was this Wang Lu really a disciple of one of the 5 unique sect? As for why there was no Yuanying stage-old monster coming down the mountain to fight for their disciple, it was probably because of this special experiential learning. When he was in the Wanxian League sect, he had received such a concept, so it was not a new thing. That being the case, there was no other way but to surrender. Moreover, at this time, he was glad that he didn't injure the opponent, otherwise, if he really provoked a Yuanying stage-old monster, that method would be enough to make him beg for death. Seeing the dirty old man so readily surrender, Wang Lu was stunned. You're quite sensible. Very well, then briefly explain your 7-star sex crime in the Wang family village. The dirty old man sighed and was very cooperative. Like pouring beans out of a bamboo tube, he spilled everything he knew. The dirty old man's surname was He Yun. In his early years, he cultivated in a small Wanxian League sect. Later, because he violated the sect's rules and his cultivation progress was slow, he was kicked out. After wandering in the 9 regions for several years, by chance coincidence, he joined the 7 Stars sect and began to do dirty business. And the Wang family village was just one of the countless classic cases of the 7 Stars sect in the Blue River region. If they didn't provoke a heaven-defying person like Wang Lu, there was nothing to write home about. Needless to say, Wang Lu was also very clear about that trick. But, you said you want me to go to the Wang family village and explain the truth to the villagers? The dirty old man, He Yun, was lying on the ground and made a thoughtful expression. I think this is inappropriate. At this time, Wang Lu was also upset about this matter, so he casually asked, what's inappropriate about it? The dirty old man hurriedly explained, this, as far as I know, the 7 Stars sect has been doing this for many years. Those who have been deceived. If they want to repent, unless they are badly bruised and have nowhere else to go, it's almost impossible. Once a person's greed is aroused, it's very difficult to suppress it. Even if I explain it to them, they will only think that you bribed me to deceive them. Wang Lu snorted. Yes, so what? The dirty old man really wanted to say, so, please give up this unrealistic idea. You're a cultivator of the 5 uniques, why bother to care about a group of wild people? Didn't the Lingjian school cut off their worldly ties? Moreover, even if you value your worldly ties, just bring your biological parents and other important relatives back to the sect. It's not realistic to want the whole village's chickens and dogs to ascend to heaven. For a time, the dirty old man was speechless and froze on the spot. Wang Lu didn't expect him to really come up with an idea. He himself couldn't think of an answer to this difficult problem, so how could this dirty old man come up with an idea? At present, this combination of swindler and idiot was simply off the charts. Even if his cultivation was unfathomable and he could slap the entire 7 stars sect to death, it would still be of no use. The idiots in the Wang family village had already decided to follow the path of mortal-immortal cultivation. Each and every one of them didn't care about their ugly appearance and wholeheartedly pursued the immortal cultivation. Even if he killed the 7 stars sect, as long as he couldn't let them become immortals, later on, the 8 stars sect and 9 stars sect would inevitably take advantage of the situation. Alas, thinking about this, he really wished he could pick up his sword and kill everyone in the village so that he could have peace and quiet. Wang Lu was in a bad mood, but on the surface, he looked more and more relaxed. Instead, he started to banter with the dirty old man. You said that in the past, you were also a good person, and your family background is also not bad. How could you be fooled by the 7 stars sect and willingly become their sect leader's lackey? The dirty old man recalled the past and wryly smiled. Our sect leader is also not an easy person to deal with. Both of us came from the Wuxia League. In fact, half of the sect's elders are from the Wuxia League. Although in your opinion, they are the 3rd class, but among the 3rd class, the 7 stars sect's development is quite good. Oh. Since they have this foundation, why not honestly cultivate instead of making life difficult for a group of wild people? The dirty old man said, their heart is clouded by profit. The 7 stars sect's high-level members are basically cultivators who have encountered obstacles in their cultivation, so it is difficult for them to go further. Therefore, when they are discouraged, their desire increases. After these years of swindling, they have accumulated quite a lot, so they really can't stop. Especially in the past few years, a batch of high-quality goods flowed out of the White Moon country to confuse the world, and the effect is excellent. In our 7 stars sect's most glorious time, we once included a prefectural city into our sphere of influence. Among the hundreds of thousands of people in the city, 60 to 70% of them were followers of our sect. During that period of time, even the lower-level disciples of our sect lived a very comfortable life. Compared to those who have no aptitude, no opportunity, and still believe in their own path of cultivation, we are many times better. Hearing this, Wang Lu's interest was piqued. Comfortable? How comfortable can it be? No matter how much wealth there is in the mortal world, it's just that. The dirty old man shook his head. You don't know about this. If it's the Wang family village or the Marquis County, there's indeed not much profit to be gained. However, if it's a more affluent county, or even a prefectural city, it would be very different. Although high-rank magical tools, magical treasures, and so on are still rare, the other resources are very abundant. For example, spirit stones. I remember that year when we occupied the prefectural city, within a year, our 7 stars sect obtained hundreds of thousands of spirit stones. Although the grade is not the same, after all. Before he could finish, he was interrupted by Wang Lu's incredulous voice. Hundreds of thousands of spirit stones. That's right. Are you trying to brag? The dirty old man anxiously said, absolutely not. If you don't believe me, you can check it yourself. Not only our 7 stars sect, if other sects can occupy a prefectural city, they can also obtain hundreds of thousands of spirit stones. If it's a high-rank mansion, 1,000,000 spirit stones is not a problem. Seeing the dirty old man being so serious, Wang Lu frowned and asked, strange, how could a group of mortal world's pariahs get so many spirit stones? The dirty old man explained, of course, it's from accumulating sand into a tower, little by little. In the 9 regions, there are generally 2 kinds of source of spirit stones. One is from the place where the surrounding spiritual energy converges, which, over time, would form a spirit stone vein. Not only the reserve is abundant, but as long as it's mined appropriately, it's almost inexhaustible. The other kind is from the scattered spirit stones that are scattered between heaven and earth, which are accidentally produced by various chance coincidences. Nowadays, the rich mineral vein is often occupied by the famous sects, because it's convenient to mine and abundant in output. But in fact, from the total amount, those scattered spirit stones are not inferior to the mineral vein. It's just that it's not easy to collect them, and the cost is too high. However, for the mortal world, there are thousands of common people, so if they collect them bit by bit, the total amount would be extremely astonishing. Considering the vastness of the 9 regions, the immortal cultivation sect only occupies a negligible amount of space. Wang Lu nodded. That's reasonable. It's wrong to ignore the power of the masses. But, a prefectural city has hundreds of thousands of spirit stones, TSK, I really didn't expect this. The dirty old man laughed. Yes, it's because you, these famous sects, didn't expect this that we have the space to make a fortune. Moreover, spirit stones are not the most important thing for us. The benefits of occupying a prefectural city are simply innumerable. Wang Lu asked, can you tell me in detail? This. The dirty old man thought for a moment. For example, a prefectural city's annual revenue is about a few million taels of silver, but the financial value that we can amass every year can be 10 times that. What the, 10 times the revenue? You're absolutely making a big leap. The dirty old man laughed. But this is the truth. A country's revenue usually won't deplete the goose that lays the golden eggs to catch the fish, because if the tax is too heavy, the people will have no way to make a living, and in the end, no one will get any benefit. However, the 7 Stars sect is different. Those foolish people who believe that mortals can also cultivate to become immortals, in order to become immortals, they don't hesitate to do anything. So what if they have to go bankrupt? They can even sell their wives and children, just in exchange for a pack of spirit root culture pills. With such foolish people, why would we worry about money? After the dirty old man said that, before Wang Lu even had the time to open his mouth, he heard the lady boss angrily said, earning this kind of unconscionable money, can you still sleep? Being yelled at by the lady boss, the dirty old man's whole body trembled. Compared to the chi cultivating stage cultivator Wang Lu, he was actually more afraid of the flat-chested girl, who obviously didn't have any cultivation, but could break his countless layers of defense with just one punch. She was the real monster. Therefore, hearing her anger, the dirty old man immediately explained, actually, you can't blame us for this. Those fanatics who lost their families, in many cases, are asking for it. We just made some false advertisements, but the things are clearly priced, and we didn't force them to sell. Even some conscientious people, seeing that their conditions are really poor, will persuade them to do what they can. But for those fanatics, it's useless. If we say too much, they will suspect that we're giving them preferential treatment. In order to cultivate to become immortals, they can do anything. For example, the Wang family village. 2 days ago, I just received the news that several families are afraid of losing the favor of the 7 Stars sect, so they plan to take your parents and family as hostages to claim credit. Hearing this, the lady boss was slightly shocked. She quickly turned to look at Wang Lu, but she found that the latter was completely indifferent. Sigh, sometimes I think that maybe this is human nature. For the sake of a bottle of spirit root cultivation, many people would not hesitate to commit murder and arson. The lady boss couldn't help but ask, but, to mortals, no matter how deranged they are, those spirit root cultivation pills couldn't possibly have any effect, right? Why are you still so stubborn? The dirty old man said, of course, there is an effect. After all, it's the groundbreaking invention of the Xingjing sect's patriarch 6 harmonies. Even if one's aptitude is dull, no matter how rare the immortal fate is, as long as they continue to take it, their cultivation can still progress. And it's this insignificant progress that can attract them wave after wave. In any case, I'm a foundation-building cultivator in name and in reality, but I didn't expect that the matter of cultivating to be so attractive. At this time, Wang Lu also interrupted and explained, Sister Ling, now in the cultivation world, other than ancient sects like ours, as long as we let go of artificial spirit roots, basically, as long as you have money, you will have a cultivation base. Even someone as fat as Wen Bao can have a cultivation base of qi cultivating stage after being fed with spirit root cultivation and the like for more than 10 years. This, the cost and the gain are completely disproportionate. No matter how much effort these commoners put in, how much money can they take out to exchange for cultivation elixirs? I'm afraid I won't even be able to stabilize the 9th level of qi cultivating stage even if I go bankrupt for a few decades. What's the point? The dirty old man was stunned for a long time. In fact, I don't know what the point is, but, since they are willing to suffer, we are certainly willing to fight. Wang Lu shrugged. Sister Ling, don't try to understand the thoughts of those idiots. If they were willing to use their brains and reason, I wouldn't have to come here to deal with this old pervert. The dirty old man wryly smiled a few times. He didn't know what to say. However, he soon realized that he didn't need to say anything anymore. Because Wang Lu continued, however, those words just now gave me an idea. Idea? The lady boss, who was leaning on the door frame that led to the back room, asked in boredom. Presumably, it was some kind of earnest and well-intentioned exhortation, such as telling those words to the villagers. The lady boss didn't have much contact with the villagers in the mortal world, but she also knew that if exhortation was useful, the 7 Stars sect wouldn't be able to do such a big thing. However, this kind of Wang Lu was really rare. On the Spirit Sword Mountain, he was carefree and unrestrained, but in the mortal world, he still had so many worries. However, the reason why the Lingjian school sent their disciples down the mountain was precisely because of these worries. Cutting off the mortal world was a painful process, so Wang Lu would probably have to suffer a lot later on, right? Then, from the corner of her eyes, she saw Wang Lu had a faint smile on his face, which immediately sent a chill down her spine. Yes, it's just an idea. Wang Lu's voice was as soft as silk, and each word was spat out with exceptional clarity, as if it carried an astonishing power. The lady boss's breathing slightly quickened. The silence in the room made her feel that her heartbeat had become ear-piercing. She had seen this scene before. It was the unique temperament of a cultivator when they had an epiphany. Could it be that Wang Lu really thought of something? In the silence, Wang Lu's soft voice tore the silence. All living things are stupid. Upon hearing this, the lady boss was startled. What living things? In this world, most people are stupid. This kind of stupidity comes from nature, just like how birds are born to fly, and fish are born to swim. In this world, most people are born to be stupid. This is the natural law, there's no way to disobey it. I once tried to resist this natural law in the Wang family village. I thought that my eloquence was unhindered, but the result was that I couldn't even win against a small fry. It's not because my eloquence degenerated, but because at that time, I disobeyed the natural law. I went against the natural law, so I lost. On the contrary, although in our view, the 7 Stars sect is a lowly cult organization, in this matter, they actually complied with the will of the heaven. The lady boss was about to go crazy. This is your epiphany? Did you misfire? They complied with the will of the heaven. Wang Lu, can you wake up a bit? Wang Lu said with a smile, right now, my mind is unprecedentedly clear. It's you who's confused, Sister Ling, think about it carefully, between heaven and earth, what is the biggest law? It's the survival of the fittest, the survival of the fittest. It's the law of the jungle. You see, the fox catches the rabbit, but what did the rabbit do to deserve to be eaten? The rabbit eats grass, so those flowers and grass deserve to be eaten? The answer is, the natural law is like this. If you sympathize with the flowers and grass, the rabbit will starve to death. If you sympathize with the rabbit, the fox will starve to death. The final conclusion will be that this world might as well not exist, lest all living things suffer. But this is obviously wrong. This series of reasoning completely confused the lady boss. The girl gently knocked the door frame with her head. However, even when the solid door frame cracked, she still didn't understand. Although she didn't understand, she still felt it was awesome. Wang Lu said, therefore, put away your cheap sympathy. We often say that the heaven and earth are heartless, treating all living things as straw dogs. If you're trapped in the mortal world and can't extricate yourself from it, then that's fine. However, since you've embarked on the immortal path, you should look at everything from a higher perspective. The common people are stupid, so the heavens path predestined them to be bullied and exploited. If no one bullies them, it would be a waste. The Seven Stars sect has done a very good job. They have successfully played an important role in the food chain. In my opinion, the Seven Stars sect and other similar sects are like a group of hardworking harvesters in a wheat field. What the hell, hardworking harvesters, you? The lady boss simply wanted to smash the entire wall with her head. Wang Lu's words completely messed her up. That's the truth. Wang Lu said and then sighed, the only problem is, as a harvester, the Seven Stars sect is too lame. The lady boss, who still felt like her brain was like glue, bitterly nodded. In short, when it comes to criticizing the Seven Stars sect, we have a common language. However, the common language was gone. Because Wang Lu said with a smile, since the Seven Stars sect is unreliable, then we might as well leave this matter to the professionals. Professionals. Wang Lu pointed at himself. The professional adventurer is here. What the, no way. Chapter 93. In short, that's it. In my opinion, this world is full of exploitation. The fox exploits the rabbit exploits the flowers and grass, the flowers and grass exploits the earth. Unless you can stand at the top of the heavenly Tao, you have to contribute something, just like a tax, which is inevitable. And for the world's stupid people, their contribution can be called IQ tax. Instead of giving this tax to the Seven Stars sect, this scam gang, I might as well collect it. In the middle of the room, Wang Lu sat upright on the bed, talking with fervor and assurance. There were 4 people sitting in front of him. One of them was the lady boss. The young girl's hands were crossed on her chest. Her expression was somewhat disapproving, but also somewhat uneasy. Next to her was the dirty old man He-yun, the former elder of the Seven Stars sect. At this time, the rope that bound him had been loosened and he was given a seat, enjoying the VIP treatment. However, sitting next to little Ling, this dirty old man felt like his hemorrhoids had flared up. He couldn't sit still. Next to him was a charming and enchanting female cultivator with a voluptuous figure. She was the dirty old man's dual cultivation partner, and also the contact person who was supposed to be stationed in the Marquis County, Wu Feihua. This woman was naturally seductive, and she also cultivated an evil cultivation method. Her every move faintly exuded a seductive charm. Unfortunately, her cheeks were swollen, and there were many internal injuries on her body. Originally, she almost broke through to the first level of qi cultivating stage, but she was beaten back to her original state by a single punch. Similarly, being in the same room with Wang Lu and little Ling, this female cultivator was also filled with nervousness and cold sweat. Next to Wu Feihua was the completely inexplicable Wen Bao. He was originally guarding outside the courtyard, but not long ago, he was called in by the courtyard's martial arts guard with Wang Lu's token. What he saw in front of him was completely incomprehensible, and what he heard were all inexplicable theories. Senior brother, what exactly is going on? Wang Lu chuckled. As I just said, the law of the heavens dictates that the ignorant sentient beings in the world need to pay an IQ tax. And in order to effectively implement this law of the heavens, I decided to establish a sect. What? Wen Bao's fat chin almost dropped to the ground. Wang Lu continued, the purpose of this sect is to collect, manage, and make good use of the intelligence tax of the world's fools, and to safeguard the interests of the fools. The lady boss raised her hand. What does this have to do with protecting interests? Of course. Wang Lu lightly said, compared to being exploited by the Seven Stars sect, isn't it better to be exploited by me? Tisk, what's the difference? You're both going to be raped. Do you want to be raped by your prince on a white horse or by a mountain spirit? What kind of bullshit analogy is that? I don't want either. Wang Lu said with a smile, the old virgin's thinking is not universal. In short, that's the truth. As long as my sect can do better than the Seven Stars sect, for those fools, it's a gain. However, no matter how inferior the Seven Stars sect is, after all, a sect that has existed for hundreds of years, so it's not easy for us to do better than them. Fortunately, we have several advantages. First, theoretical advantage. Although the Seven Stars sect has a lot of tricks to deceive others, they lack a set of consistent core theory. They can't really answer, why do we want to cultivate? Why can we cultivate? If we encounter a setback, how do we deal with it? But we can, because we have a complete set of theoretical system. The lady boss continued to raise her hand. When did we have this kind of theoretical system? Wang Lu's complexion was indifferent. I just thought about it 30 minutes ago. Second, institutional advantage. As an inferior sect, the Seven Stars sect's management is loose, the system is chaotic, and the efficiency is low. But we're different. We come from the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League. We have advanced institutional management experience, which can effectively improve the sect's operational efficiency and avoid risks. Ha ha ha. The lady boss weakly laughed. Third, personnel advantage. Most of the Seven Stars sect's members are unsatisfactory good-for-nothing cultivators, as well as ignorant disciples who have been deceived. They lack faith and action, and their personnel quality is extremely low. But we're different. Just me alone, not only do I have the top void spirit root in the immortal cultivation world, I also received a complete system of advanced immortal cultivation education. Even though my current stage is not high, my growth rate is amazing, and my foundation is very solid. In terms of personnel quality, I have an overwhelming advantage. Ha ha ha. Fourth is, the lady boss raised her hand to interrupt him. Enough, don't talk about these useless things. Just tell me what you want to do. In short, it's to use the few of us as the team to establish a preliminary sect. Just now, I gave everyone a pep talk to boost their confidence. The lady boss snorted. You can do whatever you want, but don't count me in for this kind of unreliable thing. I'm not interested in a cult. With that, she got up and prepared to leave. Wang Lu sighed. But according to my plan, the sect needs a good image ambassador. This image ambassador not only needs to have a devastatingly beautiful appearance, but also needs to have a unique holy and amiable temperament. Among the people I know, except for you, no one else has these conditions. The lady boss indifferently uttered an "oh," and then obediently sat back down. Then a certain fatty timidly raised his hand. Senior brother, I still don't quite understand what's going on, Wang Lu resolutely said, you don't need to know that much. Oh. The fatty embarrassedly put down his hand. In short, since no one has a different opinion, our sect is officially established. The lady boss raised her hand again. After talking for so long, you don't even have a name for this sect? Of course we have a name. Our purpose is to manage and use the stupid people's IQ tax. Let's call it the 9 Regions IQ Tax Administration. What the hell, what kind of strange name is this? Abbreviated as IQ Tax Administration, isn't it very awe-inspiring? Awe-inspiring my ass. That's embarrassing, okay. Of course, the name IQ Tax Administration is avant-garde, so it's only limited to high-level internal use. Let's call it Wisdom Sect to the outside world. It's still weird. Tisk, it's hard to explain it to a person with IQ like you. Let's applaud first. Clatter, the room was filled with awkward sparse applause. A moment later, the lady boss put down her hand and sighed. Congratulations on risking being killed by the disciplinary elder to go down the mountain and set up your own cult organization. And then what? What do you want to do with these 2 people? With that, the girl pointed her finger at the 2 Seven Stars sect prisoners of war, which made the 2 of them tremble and cold sweat like a spring. They were afraid that they would be killed to silence them. Fortunately, Wang Lu didn't have any killing intent. Instead, he said with a smile, the next step is to further enrich our talented team. With that, he looked at the dirty old man and Wu Feihua. The lady boss froze for a moment, and then incredulously asked, Wang Lu, do you mean, you want to also? The dirty old man and Wu Feihua also widened their eyes in surprise. Although they already knew that Wang Lu didn't have any killing intent, they always thought that even if they could avoid death, they couldn't escape punishment. Now, it seemed like he wanted to take them as his underlings. Oh, these two people are the elders of the Seven Stars sect. Although their cultivation level is low and their foundation is poor, they are, after all, immortal cultivators. They can be used as labor force. Humph, do whatever you want. The lady boss was obviously not interested in Wang Lu's business. After listening to these words, countless thoughts arose in the dirty old man and Wu Feihua's mind. However, no one dared to open their mouth, for fear that the other party would suddenly turn hostile and behead them. Wang Lu said with a smile, "Hee, you two don't have to be afraid. Although I have become enemies with the Seven Stars sect, as long as you two can forsake the darkness and enter the light, I will let bygones be bygones. In the future, as the backbone of my sect, if you do your best, all kinds of welfare and treatment will only be better than the Seven Stars sect." The two of them stiffly nodded with a smile. Their hearts quickly calculated the gains and losses, but they couldn't calculate it clearly. However, in any case, they were now prisoners, so when Wang Lu said the sun rises from the west, they could only nod. Seeing the attitude of these two people, Wang Lu faintly smiled, thinking that the loyalty of these two newcomers was not enough, but it didn't matter. As a leader, especially as a leader, the most important thing was to lead the team, and the way to lead the team. That night, when they left the county magistrate's mansion, Wang Lu looked for the dirty old man and Wu Feihua to talk alone to boost their morale. He listed 3 benefits to the dirty old man He-yun, which instantly penetrated the other party's heart and made him a loyal dog. First of all, although my cultivation level is not high, you can't compare to my background. Even if I have only been cultivating for 2 years, the knowledge that I obtained from the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League, even if you exhaust your 100 years of effort, you still can't compare. The dirty old man wryly smiled and said, "That's true. I've been cultivating for 100 years, but my core cultivation method is just a random 7 stars secret art. Even a middle-ranked cultivation method is rarely seen. However, the disciples of the famous sects are actually flipping through the ancient books of high-ranked cultivation methods. It's really. Don't be envious of a high-ranked cultivation method, even if I give it to you, with your mixed spirit root aptitude, you won't be able to cultivate it. But even a low-ranked cultivation method is suitable and not suitable. When you were cultivating in the Wanxian League, the compatibility between your spirit root and cultivation method was just passable. But after you were expelled from the sect, your foundation establishment cultivation method was cut off, so you had no choice but to use the 7 stars secret to make up for it. This kind of compatibility plummeted. The road ahead is full of thorns, and your original foundation has also been abandoned, right? The dirty old man was even more speechless. However, I happen to have a few cultivation methods that are suitable for mixed spirit root. I don't dare to say that they can help you cultivate to a high realm, but after all, they are much better than your current half-dead state. As long as you do your job well, I can give these cultivation methods to you." The dirty old man's heart was immediately moved. Secondly, in the 7 stars sect, you're nothing more than a 6 stars elder, so your power is limited. But now, I need people, so you're the deputy director of the tax bureau, which is also the vice sect leader of the wisdom sect. Director's favor, I don't dare to accept it. There's nothing I don't dare to accept. Since the sect has just been established, there are many things waiting to be done. And the ones who can do it are you and your wife, these experienced people. If we rely on a shoddy lady boss who can't even run an inn and a fat youth, this sect would be finished." Hearing the evaluation of the lady boss, the dirty old man was frightened and didn't dare to casually respond. Moreover, the few of us going down the mountain is nothing more than experiential learning. We can't stay down the mountain forever. If this sect develops to a certain extent, letting you, the vice sect leader, be the executive vice sect leader is not a bad idea. Although the concept of the so-called executive vice sect leader was still unfamiliar, how could the dirty old man not understand its meaning? His heart was moved. Third, your 7 stars sect, this kind of small sect, at most, can only stir up trouble in a remote place. If it's a real feng shui treasure land, such as the Great Ming country's several rich and populous prefectural cities or even capital cities, do you dare to infiltrate it? Do you dare to infiltrate it? If you dare to show your face, the sects of the Union of 10,000 Immortals will crush you. However, I have a background in the Lingjian school, so which ordinary sect would dare to provoke me? At least in the Blue River region, the background of this Lingjian school is the absolute power. Wait a minute, Mr. Director, do you think that the Lingjian school will allow you to show your sect's signboard? Nonsense, of course not. If the disciplinary elder knew about this, he would be struck down by the lightning tribulation. I don't care, but you will certainly turn into ashes. What the? Therefore, we can't blatantly show our signboard, we still need to be low-key. The Lingjian school is just our trump card, but if you don't have this trump card, your confidence in doing things will be different, understand? The Wang family village is just the starting point, and the Marquis County is just an insignificant stop along the way. Even the prefectural city of the Eastern Host Prefecture is not our destination. Open your eyes, in the Blue River region, there are many countries that are more powerful and richer than the Great Ming country. After hearing these words, the dirty old man was not only moved, but also his blood was boiling. How long has it been since he was moved by his ideals? Since he was expelled from the sect, wandering in the 9 regions, most of the time, the dirty old man was muddle-headed, muddling along. However, today, after talking with Wang Lu, he suddenly found the meaning of his life. It was not just to have a double cultivation with the big breasts, charming face, but completely lacking in noble temperament. In the Blue River region, he didn't know how many famous female cultivators there were. Previously, he was just an insignificant member of the immortal cultivation world. In the words of the director, he was a loser. But now, it was different. In the future, if he was successful in his career, he was afraid that those outstanding beauties would line up for him to have sex with them. Wang Lu used these 3 advantages to move the dirty old man He Yun, and he also used a similar theory to move the dirty old man's Taoist companion, Wu Feihua. Madame Feihua quickly realized that if she followed the director and worked hard, in the future, if he was successful in his career, those beautiful male cultivators would all be her furnace, ha ha ha. Alas, in fact, the conditions of the director were not bad. He was young, at the intersection of youth and youth, handsome and elegant, and his temperament was also good, when he didn't speak. More importantly, he had a bright future, and he also had his primordial yang energy. Unfortunately, there was that fierce and peerless flat-chested woman, so it was probably not her turn to eat this piece of meat. But so what? Wu Feihua was already very satisfied with her future. In this way, the structure of the 9 regions IQ Tax Administration Bureau was basically formed. Chapter 94. Shortly after the establishment of the 9 regions Intelligence Taxation Administration, the first 5 leaders left the Marquis County overnight. The reason was very simple. As the base of the sect, Marquis County had too many congenital defects. First, the attitude of the county's officials and people toward the immortal cultivation sect was relatively cold. For example, the 7 Stars sect could be regarded as a relatively influential sect in the nearby area, but they couldn't wantonly develop believers in the county. They could only barely occupy the county magistrate's courtyard. Even the dirty old man, He Yun, who was a 6 Stars elder, had to pay the bill if he wanted to play with a woman. Cultivators simply couldn't be lawless here, and they didn't even have many privileges. Marquis County, as the ancient battlefield against the wild beasts, had a very deep heritage. Second, Marquis County, as the starting base, was relatively too conspicuous. If they wantonly levied IQ tax here, not only would it attract pressure from the Great Ming country, it was also bound to encounter resistance from the 7 Stars sect. Third, they lacked the necessary network. Whether it was the dirty old man or Wu Feihua, they were just passers-by who were stationed here for a short period of time. They didn't have their own forces in the county, let alone Wang Lu and the others. With these several factors superimposed, leaving became an inevitable choice. Then, where would the 9 regions' intelligence taxation administration be based? The answer was actually obvious. My dear dog-ear mountain, I'm back. Facing the early morning sun, the chief of the 9 regions' intelligence taxation administration, or the wisdom sect leader, Wang Lu, stood at the foot of the dog-ear mountain, smugly and loudly laughed. Are you sure you want to start developing your force in this wilderness? The wisdom sect's holy maiden, Feng Ling, very puzzledly asked. It's completely inconsistent with your ambition to dominate the 9 regions. The fatty also began to complain, senior brother, why are we always in the wilderness? The living conditions are too hard. Sect leader Wang Lu humphed and said, if we don't look for this wilderness and go directly to the capital of the Eastern Wei Prefecture, it would be strange if people don't shit on us. Although we have the Lingjian school behind us, we don't have people, we don't have money, we're an out-and-out grassroots sect. Moreover, I should have told you that a single spark can start a prairie fire. The path we are taking is called the rural encirclement of the city. The development of grassroots sects generally follows this path. If they succeed in the future, their future is limitless. What's more, the Wang family village had a unique advantage, rich spiritual energy, which could easily trigger miracles. It could provide great assistance to the initial development of the sect. In the future, when the scale grew, it could even be used as a revolution, a holy land for immortals. In fact, it has more advantages than those bustling cities. One of the 6-star perverts beside him heaved a long sigh. Director General is farsighted and farsighted. His words hit the nail on the head. In the past, when I was at the 7 Stars sect's main altar, the sect leader gathered all of our 6 Stars elders to discuss the layout of the Wang family village. The plan that we painstakingly came up with is more or less like this. Moreover, there are many places that are not as thorough as the deputy director. Wang Lu nodded with a smile. You are very sensible. My promotion of you was not in vain. Work hard, and there will be many benefits for you in the future. The dirty old man immediately expressed his gratitude. I will never forget Director's great kindness. Even if my body is smashed to pieces, it would be difficult to repay it. What a loyal and devoted old servant face. It was hard to imagine that just a day ago, the two of them were diametrically opposed to each other. It was even more difficult to imagine that a foundation establishment stage cultivator would willingly submit to a low-level chi cultivating stage youth. This was the skill of a leader. As a leader, he didn't need to be more powerful than the others. As long as he could lead the team and let them exert their labor force to the limit, that would be the victory. On the way here, I have already clearly explained what you should do. You and Fei Hua can do it with peace of mind. The Wang family village has the foundation of the 7 Stars sect, so it won't be difficult to take it down. The dirty old man nodded, and his complexion turned serious. Rest assured, Deputy Director, this is the first battle after Fei Hua and I abandoned the dark for the light. There will be no mistakes. I wish you success. With that, Wang Lu patted the dirty old man's shoulder, turned around, and went down the mountain. The dirty old man and Wu Feihua looked at each other and smiled. They each launched their respective spells and floated down from the top of the mountain toward the Wang family village. The Wang family village on the Dog-Ear Mountain was originally a comfortable and peaceful village in the Marquis County. It was rich in products, simple and unsophisticated, just like a paradise. However, in recent years, a lot of changes had taken place in the village. The people's hearts gradually became violent, and the smile that often hung on the villagers' faces became increasingly rare. Instead, it was replaced by a kind of insatiable hunger and resentment. The village was filled with restless hostility. Early in the morning, more than a dozen villagers gathered in a dilapidated wooden house. There were young hunters, strong blacksmiths, and a few indignant peasant women. These people entered the house one after another and greeted each other. However, their voices were filled with a deep exhaustion. Brother Zhang, your face looks so ugly. Ah, Zhuzi, aren't you the same, sister-in-law Wang? You haven't slept for a while, right? Yes, every night, when I close my eyes, I have nightmares. I always dream of a grotesque devil. When I wake up, I'm covered in cold sweat and can't sleep at all. AI, it seems like everyone is like this. That's right. Who in the village could sleep soundly these days? It's all because of that little devil. Not long ago, Wang Lu killed 2 7-star sex cultivators and a publicity envoy. Since then, many villagers have fallen into panic. They were worried that Wang Lu, this devil, would harm the whole village, and they were also worried that the 7-star sex Daoist immortals would punish the village. That little devil is really hateful. Not only did he cut off our immortal fate, but he also caused such a big disaster. AI, the whole village is going to be implicated by him. Yes, I heard from the people in the county that in a village, there's a kid who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. He disrespected the Daoist immortals, and as a result, the whole village died of a sudden illness overnight. No one survived. That can't be. These 2 days, I've been feeling a headache. Could it be? When the crowd heard this, they immediately panicked. I don't think we can wait any longer. A village woman very high profile said, that little devil offended the Daoist immortals of the 7-star sect, so in the future, he will die a horrible death. But for no reason, we're implicated by him. What's going on? Then what do you think we should do? What else can we do? Didn't we already discuss this a few days ago? We should capture that little devil's family and apologize to the Daoist immortals of the 7-star sect. Wang Fugui. He hasn't done anything evil in these past few years, so it's not good for us to make a move on him. Isn't it enough to give birth to a son who is worse than a pig and a dog? The village woman screamed, don't tell me you want everyone to be implicated by him. Sister-in-law Lu, what are you talking about? Aren't I also implicated by him? I just think that with that little devil here, it's not that easy to capture his parents. Moreover, didn't Xiaohu oppose it before? At this time, a scholarly-looking villager sneered and said, Xiaohu is kind-hearted? What a joke. How can you be sure that Xiaohu isn't confused by the devil? The 7-star sex Daoist immortals and ambassador were killed by the devil that day, so why did he leave Wang Xiaohu alive? In these 2 days, that devil isn't here, so this is a rare opportunity. Why would Wang Xiaohu stop us from protecting Wang Fugui's family? As soon as these words came out, the room immediately quieted down, and an even more violent mood quickly brewed. At this time, a burst of exclamation came from outside the room. Daoist immortals. Daoist immortals are here. Everyone in the room was surprised. Daoist immortals are here. They hastily pushed the door open and saw a mass of pink gauze covering 2 cultivators in the sky. Like an auspicious cloud that descended from the sky, they slowly descended under the eyes of more and more onlookers. These 2 people were naturally the dirty old man and Wu Feihua. The place where they landed was the open space in the middle of the village. After the 2 of them landed, they were quickly surrounded by dozens of people. With all kinds of complex eyes, they focused on them and talked about them. Are they, the 7-star sex Daoist immortals? They don't look like it. I heard that the 7-star sex Daoist immortals would embroider stars on their lapel, but they don't. Then who are they? The dirty old man and Wu Feihua, at this time, kept in mind Wang Lu's exhortation and the self-cultivation of an actor. They turned a blind eye to the surrounding voices. They just frowned and looked around as if they were looking for something. Before long, a gray-haired old man tremblingly walked over. He was the Wang family village head, Wang Qinian. A few days ago, the chaos caused by Wang Lu in the village made him, the village head, unable to eat or sleep in peace. In just a few days, he seemed to have aged 20 years, and his originally steady pace had become unsteady. 2 Daoist immortals have come to our village. Our Wang family village, sorry for not going out to greet you. Wang Qinian stuttered for a while before he was interrupted by Wu Feihua. What a heavy devil aura. Wang Qinian was startled. Daoist immortals were indeed Daoist immortals. With a glance, they could see that there was a devil doing evil here. Thinking of this, the old man quickly knelt to the ground. Daoist immortals, save us. Our village has recently been attacked by a devil, the whole village is in danger. However, before the old man's knees could touch the ground, he was propped up by an invisible force. The dirty old man, He Yun, waved his hand. Elder, please get up. We're here to subdue the devil. Wang Qinian was moved to tears. Thank you, Daoist immortals, for your great kindness. It's just that, the devil is very powerful, so Daoist immortals must be careful. A few days ago, the 7 Stars sect's Daoist immortals were injured by the devil. However, Wu Feihua frowned. 7 Stars sect? Isn't that a devil sect? Wang Qinian was stunned. Devil sect? The dirty old man, He Yun, opened his mouth and said, yes, that's right. The devil aura lingering here is from the 7 Stars sect. Heh, this group of dogs really can't stop eating shit. With that, the dirty old man raised his hand and shouted, purify. Suddenly, a mass of boundless green gas was spouted out from his mouth, which turned into a mass of green cloud in mid-air and then fell down from the sky, enveloping nearly 100 villagers. After being contaminated by the green gas, all of them felt that their bodies were relaxed. All the dirt was gone, and their whole body was full of energy. Immortal method, this is an immortal method. The villagers cried out in disbelief. Before this, although they had seen the 7 Stars sect's Daoist immortals display their immortal method, those Daoist immortal spells were far from this magical. Hearing the shouts from the surrounding people, the dirty old man inwardly laughed. Sure enough, they're all fools, making a fuss over a mere cleansing incantation. Wu Feihua was naturally amused, but her face was as calm as still water. Senior brother, your exorcism spell is really effective. This place is indeed polluted by the 7 Stars sect's devil aura. Yes, that exorcism spell is specifically for the 7 Stars sect's devil. Since the effect is so obvious, it's probably not bad. The two of them spoke in a professional tone, as if it was light and breezy, but it made the surrounding people's hair stand on end. Wang Qinian plucked up his courage and interjected, 2 Daoist immortals, just now you mentioned the 7 Stars sect, what exactly is it? The dirty old man righteously explained, the 7 Stars sect is a very famous devil sect in the Blue River region. They specialize in deceiving the common people, and are the public enemy of our righteous sects. Boom! Wang Qinian felt as if he was struck by lightning. Suddenly, he saw stars, and his chest was in severe pain, as if his heart was about to jump out of his chest. Devil sect. Despicable. Deceiving. Public enemy of the righteous sect. Each word was like a heavy hammer that struck the tip of his heart, making his chest feel suffocated. However, the next moment, a cool breath hit his face. He saw that charming female cultivator stretched out her jade-like fingers and released a pink mist, which relieved him of his myocardial infarction. Senior, don't be too anxious, if you have something to say, then say it slowly. Wang Qinian coughed a few times, but his mind was still in a mess. However, the surrounding villagers heard it clearly. After the infinite shock, they gradually regained their senses. Some villagers couldn't bear it anymore and boldly opened their mouth to ask. Daoist immortal, what you just said, is it true? Wu Feihua was somewhat unhappy. Do we need to lie to you? The dirty old man played the role of a kind elder. This is absolutely true. This 7 Stars sect has been stirring up trouble in the Blue River region, and the victims are countless. We, the righteous sect, have long wanted to crack down on them. Unfortunately, they come and go like ghosts, so we haven't been able to catch them. This time, my junior sister and I passed by this place and found that the devil chi here is astonishing, so we hurriedly came here. Unfortunately, we couldn't catch the 7 Stars sect. After hearing those words, all the villagers were stunned. They felt as if the whole world was collapsing in front of them, unable to be rebuilt. The Seven Stars sect was a liar? Devil sect? Public enemy of the righteous sect? How could it be possible? That was obviously a sect that could help everyone become an immortal. How could it be a liar? One of the villagers unwillingly asked, "May I ask, Taoist immortal, the Seven Stars sect said that everyone can become an immortal, is that also false?" For a time, the square was particularly quiet. Everyone held their breath, waiting for the old immortal's answer. Of course, at this time, they didn't know what to do if the old immortal said no. However, they still had to ask. "Oh, everyone can become an immortal, this is, of course, true." The dirty old man said without batting an eyelid. The Seven Stars sect didn't lie on this issue. Phew. For a time, many people breathed a sigh of relief. However, that devil sect, let alone helping people become an immortal, the number of people who have been consigned to eternal damnation by them is simply too many to count. The villagers, who had just calmed down, suddenly tensed up again. Consigned to eternal damnation? Humph, the spirit root development pills and other medicines they use are all exceptionally cheap defective products. Moreover, they completely don't know how to use them. They only let people take them indiscriminately, and then buy new medicines at sky-high prices. If they take them like this, even a cultivator who has a chance to become an immortal would be destroyed by these poisons. Wu Feihua quietly added, "Actually, this is still considered good. Even if they eat something bad, it would only destroy their spirit root." However, sometimes, the Seven Stars sect, in order to cultivate their devil method, would even sacrifice the lives of ordinary people to refine their devil treasures. That is truly tragic. The dirty old man nodded. Yes, last month, they just launched the 10,000 spirits blood sacrifice on the eastern Sky Mountain. Within the radius of 100 miles, thousands of people were sacrificed. It's simply too horrible to look at. Yes, but their 10,000 spirits blood sacrifice is not complete. After it was launched, those villagers were half dead. Their bodies festered and melted, but they still couldn't die. They struggled for 7 days and 7 nights. Alas, that soaring resentment is actually a pleasant surprise. The two people's back and forth scared the nearby villagers to the point that their faces turned pale. The village head, Wang Qinian, stammered, "Taoist immortal, that Seven Stars sect has been staying here for 2 years, I don't know if there's that 10,000 spirits blood sacrifice." The dirty old man's complexion turned solemn. 2 years. They have been planning this for so long. Yes. The old village head was about to cry. "Taoist immortal, please save us." A moment later, the surrounding hundreds of villagers all knelt down. "Taoist immortal, please save us." The dirty old man raised his hand and simultaneously helped the surrounding villagers up. "Rest assured, since we're just passing by, we won't just stand by and watch the Seven Stars sect's evil deeds. Village head, please take us to walk around the village, we want to carefully examine this place." Very well, this old man will lead the way for the 2 Taoist immortals. The 2 Taoist immortals, followed by hundreds of villagers, slowly walked around the village. Before long, they arrived at the periphery of the graveyard behind the village. The two people looked at each other, and then Wu Feihua made a horrified expression. "What a strong death aura. What's going on here?" The dirty old man was also aghast. Is this an ancient battlefield? Such a strong death aura, at least 1 million people have died here. Boom! The villagers behind him were frightened. The dirty old man continued to frighten them. "No, this is not a normal accumulation of death aura, it's caused by a special array. My goodness, this is the gathering of the nearby spiritual energy along the feng shui line, which is then transformed by the yin and yang array. Originally, this kind of artificial death aura lacks activity, but the Seven Stars sect designed this array, which is stimulated by the Wang family village's yang energy. Once the death aura erupts, within a radius of thousands of miles, not even a blade of grass will grow. However, this buried heavenly evil weapon will take shape. Using such a strong death aura to nurture a heavenly evil weapon, what kind of power would it have? Wu Feihua lightly covered her mouth. She was extremely shocked. When did they bury such a deep thing? Probably because they were surrounded by the righteous sect and were forced into a dead end. However, if this heavenly evil weapon really succeeds, it will stir up trouble in the future, which will give us a big headache. Wu Feihua clenched her teeth. Senior brother, if we work together, we should be able to break this yin and yang life and death array, right? At most, there's only a 40% chance. However, if we wait any longer, the death aura may erupt at any time. Fortunately, our divination today was different, so we specifically came here to inspect. Finally, we came in time. Good, junior sister, let's do it. While speaking, the dirty old man's eyes turned sharp, and he loudly shouted, "Reveal yourself." Buzz! A black sky curtain suddenly appeared in everyone's line of sight, like a dark cloud that blotted out the sky. Under the sky curtain, there were layers upon layers of ghostly shadows. Countless vengeful spirits and malicious spirits were forced to reveal themselves by the Taoist immortal's incantation and ran around. How could the nearby villagers have ever seen such a vision? For a time, they thought that the end of the world was coming, so they cried for their parents. The dirty old man and Wu Feihua looked at each other and smiled. This yin and yang life and death array and this dark sky curtain were naturally their masterpieces. With low-level foundation establishment and high-level qi cultivating stage cultivation, it was somewhat strenuous to activate this kind of illusion technique. However, if they added the high-rank spirit stones provided by Wang Lu, then it would be a different story. However, even so, with their cultivation, they couldn't hold on for long. According to the script, it was time for them to take the next step. Senior brother, this life and death array is really powerful. We can't even suppress it. Even if we can't suppress it, we still have to suppress it. Now that hundreds of ghosts have appeared, if we don't suppress it, the death energy will erupt, and you and I will die without a burial place. But, I really can't hold on. Even if you can't hold on, you still have to. I know. Junior sister, if the intensity of the death energy doesn't decrease, you have to run away by yourself. How can I leave you behind? If we die together. Amidst their hoarse roars, the two of them became more and more engrossed in their acting. The hearts of the villagers behind them became colder and colder. Under the stunned eyes of the people, a pretty girl came out from the broken black curtain. Her delicate eyebrows were slightly twisted, revealing a bit of dissatisfaction. Hey, you two, what are you doing? The dirty old man and Wu Feihua survived a disaster. With cold sweat on their foreheads, they were stunned on the spot. A moment later, they hurriedly knelt down. Greetings, Saintess. Chapter 95. Greetings, Miss Holy Maiden. Facing the sudden appearance of this pretty girl, the dirty old man and Wu Feihua, after regaining their composure, did not hesitate to kneel down. Humph, you two are really something. You actually dared to break the 7 stars sect's yin-yang life and death array. No matter what, it's a sect leader level array. If you can break it, I'll invite you to be the sect leader, okay? The dirty old man and Wu Feihua simultaneously apologized. Subordinates were thoughtless and overestimated themselves, which almost led to a disaster. Miss Holy Maiden, please punish us. Humph, forget it. In any case, nothing bad happened. You two just need to remember this lesson. Doing good deeds is a good thing, but overestimating yourself is not good. The two quickly nodded, and then the dirty old man asked, Miss Holy Maiden, why did you come here? The girl said, of course, I was instructed to come here. Someone divined that there might be a disaster here, so he asked me to come and see the situation. I didn't expect it to be you two idiots. Wu Feihua explained, my senior brother and I also divined and found out that there's an amazing change here, so, Humph, when you divined, didn't you also divine yourselves? Not to mention that there's really a change. Can the two of you cope with it? Forget it, I'm not going to argue with you. I'll break the rest of the array first. With that, the girl, with a hurried look, lifted her leg and walked away. Her movement technique was surprisingly fast. With one step, she appeared dozens of meters away, and with another flash, she completely disappeared. After a while, from the corner of the village, a burst of ghostly cries, accompanied by the broken black light curtain, made people's hair stand on end. At this time, the villagers, who had just recovered from the horror of life and death, boldly asked, two Taoist immortals, just now, that fairy, the dirty old man wryly smiled. She's our sect's holy maiden. Her status is venerated, and her immortal method is superb. If it weren't for Miss Holy Maiden's arrival today, all of us would have died without a burial place. When these words came out, the villagers' eyes that were looking at the distant place suddenly became incomparably awestruck. Then, the saintess is here, we. Village Chief Wang Chinian was at a loss, his heart pounding. The dirty old man said, "Old man, you don't have to be afraid. The Holy Maiden has never paid much attention to unnecessary etiquette. Although she is sometimes impatient, she is actually a very warm and kind person. You don't have to pay special attention to her. Furthermore, the saintess is very busy. After dealing with the yin-yang life and death array, she will probably leave in half a day." "Ah, you're leaving so soon?" Wang Chinian and the others were taken aback. "How can we do that?" On one hand, he was reluctant to part with his savior. On the other hand, it was rare for a true immortal to pass by. If he just let him go like this, it seemed, the dirty old man sighed and said, "The saintess has a venerable status, but there are many things to do. In any case, it's impossible for her to stay in one place for a long time. At least we can thank the saintess for saving our lives." The dirty old man still wanted to persuade them, but Wu Feihua had already put on a dark face. Eating local specialties in your Wang family village is likely to mean that other places like the Zhang family village or the Li family village will be harmed by the Seven Stars sect. When that time comes, do you think you can compensate for hundreds of people's lives? With such a big accusation, no one dared to speak. However, at this time, they heard a burst of hearty laughter. "Ha ha ha, how could she leave so quickly? Other people will take care of the other things. Our saintess is not a firefighter. I sent her here to fight for a long time." While talking, the protagonist of this drama finally appeared. It was an ordinary-looking, medium stature, and nothing special about a young man. He looked about 17 or 18 years old. However, the vicissitudes of life in his eyes were like an old man's, which formed a great contrast with his relaxed smile, making people unable to tell his exact age. Who was he? For a time, this became the doubt in the hearts of most of the villagers. In fact, this young man was naturally Wang Lu in disguise. Moreover, he didn't spend too much time on this disguise. It was nothing more than a slight change of bone shape, and then a makeup technique to change the details. At least, this disguise was much simpler than Wang Lu's disguise. Moreover, this disguise didn't appear frequently, so there was no need to elaborate it. Today's appearance was nothing more than to set off another climax in this big drama. Through layers upon layers of methods, he would explode the climax to the extreme, exploding this group of brainless villagers out of their wits and at a loss as to what to do. This way, it would be convenient for the next step of brainwashing. And Wang Lu's appearance was undoubtedly successful. With a few words and a smiling face, he successfully attracted everyone's attention, leaving the villagers at a loss. However, among the more than 100 people, there were always those with sharp minds who captured the main point of that sentence. "I sent her here." After realizing the meaning of this sentence, those smart people suddenly felt their vision go black. Their worldview, which had been repeatedly damaged, was once again shaken. There were signs of a head exploding. Of course, there were also some stubbornly unshakable people. "Who do you think you are? How dare you talk to an immortal like that?" This impatient and slow-witted boor subconsciously roared. But just as he finished roaring, he saw two pairs of cold and awe-inspiring eyes staring at him. The dirty old man and Wu Feihua, these two true immortals, were glaring at him. Suddenly, he fell to the ground, and a warm liquid flowed out from between his legs. For a mere mortal, being stimulated by the divine sense of high-level qi cultivating stage and low-level foundation establishment stage cultivators, it was natural for him to wet his pants. After displaying their immortal means, the two of them respectfully knelt down on one knee in front of the floating teenager, just like what was written in the script. "Greetings, cult leader." Boom! The dirty old man and Wu Feihua's kneeling really scared the villagers. "Greetings, cult leader." This was actually the arrival of the cult leader. No matter how ignorant the villagers were, they also knew what the word cult leader meant. For the villagers, it was probably a more terrifying existence than the emperor. It was simply unimaginable. Since they couldn't imagine it, they could only freeze on the spot. Wang Lu inwardly sneered. Sure enough, they were a group of fools who deserved to pay the IQ tax. Previously, even the 7 Stars sect's shoddy scam was able to deceive them. Now that they met with professional means, naturally, they had no resistance. Although he was inwardly contemptuous, Wang Lu displayed his self-cultivation as an actor and still acted very realistically. What are you paying respects for? How could there be so many rules? Wang Lu smiled and waved his hand. The two people naturally made an invisible force lifting posture and respectfully stood to the side. The dirty old man and Wu Feihua's realistic performance once again shocked the villagers, deepening their awe of Wang Lu, the cult leader. However, things were not over yet. Because of the previous appearance of a certain holy maiden, the dirty old man and Wu Feihua's status among the villagers had dropped a lot. Therefore, not long after, the holy maiden, who was dealing with the remnants of the yin-yang life and death array, appeared on the scene. "Hey, cult leader, why are you here? Didn't you say you have something important to deal with? I'm just worried about you. No matter what, it's still a cult leader level array. In case you're killed by the explosion, I can at least come here to burn some incense for you." Damn! What kind of attitude is this? Considerate, meticulous attitude of a superior toward his subordinate. Speaking of which, recently, you didn't even kneel down to greet me, which made me suffer a blow. Tell me honestly, do you want to usurp my position? Usurp your sister. Although the girl said that, she still reluctantly saluted Wang Lu, but she quickly added a grimace. This kind of lively dialogue was naturally for others to see. Although in theory, a dignified leader with an unshakable hierarchy was more suitable to control a group of ignorant people. But first of all, with this group of amateurs in his hands, he was afraid that it would backfire on him. At the very least, if he made the lady boss kneel down respectfully to him, he would just have to wait for his portrait to be hung on the wall. Secondly, Wang Lu didn't intend to walk the path of a conventional sect. If he really wanted to walk it, he might as well borrow the dirty old man's identity to put on the 7 Stars sect's shell. However, he really didn't like the 7 Stars sect. Since he was determined to run a sect, if he didn't come up with something new, then he would be unworthy of his professional adventurer title. Therefore, this time, he put on a big show to smash the 7 Stars sect's set of deceit. Then, he would let these foolish villagers see the power of the IQ tax bureau. Sure enough, seeing that this immortal sect leader didn't put on an unreachable air, some people's hearts began to move. Dear immortals. Wang Qinian once again played the role of the village chief, mustering up the courage to speak for the villagers at the critical moment. However, before he could speak, Wang Lu had already interrupted him and said, "The Wang family village is a treasured land of feng shui. When I wandered down to the mortal dimension, I found this place to be the most suitable place to establish an altar. Unfortunately, my time in the mortal dimension has come to an end today and I have no choice but to return to the immortal dimension. I'll come back again when I need to establish an altar in the future." After he finished speaking, he disappeared in a flash, causing the old village chief to choke on his words. Then, he heard Wu Feihua sigh, "Has cult master ascended to the immortal world again?" The dirty old man gently nodded with a face full of reverence. You're worthy to be a person from the immortal world. You come and go without a trace. You're like a dragon that shows its head but not its tail. The saintess was speechless. Weren't these two people too engrossed in their acting? What's more, it's like a mysterious dragon showing its head but not its tail. You were the one who used invisibility to hide Wang Lu. He's still watching the show from my side. However, only by acting realistically could you win people's trust. Sure enough, upon hearing the words ascended to the immortal world, Wang Qinian was even more aghast. Cult master, he's actually a Taoist immortal. Although as early as the Seven Stars sect, the people of the Wang family village affectionately called them Taoist immortals, they actually knew that they were just cultivators, not real immortals. However, even if they were cultivators, they were still 17 or 18 levels higher than mortals, so they eagerly fawned on them. But looking at the current situation, there was actually an immortal. However, when he thought about it carefully, it didn't seem too unbelievable. The dirty old man and Wu Feihua, these two Taoist immortals, were already amazing. Later on, the saintess was even stronger than them. Finally, when the cult master personally came, even the saintess had to bow down to him. Wang Qinian only needed to think about these layers of progressive relationships, and it was not difficult for him to come to a conclusion. If he was not a real Taoist immortal, how could he subdue these several great cultivators before him? The dirty old man also laughed. Of course, cult master is a real Taoist immortal. Unfortunately, the cult master is still in the immortal world, and it takes a long time before he can descend to the lower realm. Every time he descends to the lower realm, he still needs to condense his body, which is not easy. For you to be able to see him, I don't know how many generations of good fortune you have cultivated. The villagers hastily echoed his words and kowtowed. At this time, it was the old village head, Wang Qinian, who displayed his unique wisdom. Just now, I heard from cult master that the Wang family village is a feng shui treasure land. I don't know, the dirty old man explained, the surrounding spiritual energy here is rich, which is an excellent place for cultivation. The Seven Stars sect also fancied this place's spiritual energy, so they set up the yin-yang life and death array, which turned the spiritual energy into dead energy, and then stimulated it with the village's vitality. This kind of place is rare in the entire 9 regions. Unfortunately, that devil sect, the Seven Stars sect, found this treasure land, but they only wanted to destroy it to refine their devil treasure. How short-sighted they are. Regarding the surrounding spiritual energy in devil treasure, Wang Qinian naturally didn't know much, but he knew that a huge opportunity was right in front of him. Thinking about what the cult master just said about setting up the altar, the old man's heart couldn't stop pounding. Thinking back to the time when the Seven Stars sect was still around, the villagers fawned on those publicity ambassadors and cultivators in every possible way. They even built a courtyard for them, but they could only let them stay here for a while and occasionally preach. Of course, now it seemed that everything was very reasonable. They originally planned to blow up the mountain, so how could they possibly stay here for a long time? However, if this wisdom sect set up an altar here, then it was simply, Senior Taoist Immortal, may I ask what exactly is the matter with the altar that cult master just said? The so-called altar is to condense the scattered surrounding spiritual energy and transform it into elixirs, spirit stones, and other things, which are convenient for cultivators to cultivate. However, the cult master just casually said that the establishment of the altar is likely to change the direction of the surrounding spiritual energy and affect the feng shui. At least, it needs the consent of the local people. Wang Qinian, of course, agreed. He nodded again and again. Taoist Immortal is the savior of our entire village. If there's a need, please feel free to do it. That being the case. Senior Holy Maiden, what do you think? What else could the Holy Maiden think? After she finished her part of the play, she was already bored. If you guys want to do it, then do it. The dirty old man was suddenly stunned, thinking, Senior Holy Maiden, why don't you act according to common sense? The script isn't written like this, you should be more enthusiastic, more excited. However, the dirty old man was indeed worthy to be a former professional swindler. His on-the-spot response was extremely fast. With Senior Holy Maiden's approval, I think we can get twice the result with half the effort. Fei Hua and I will go and prepare the materials first. In 2 days, we will come here to set up the altar. Chapter 96. After the wisdom sect people left the Wang family village, the village immediately turned into a mess. Several hundred people in the village came out in full force, surrounding the village head's house, clamoring incessantly. In just half a day, too many things happened in the Wang family village, causing this group of inexperienced villagers to fall into great chaos. In this chaos, they naturally needed a guide to point out the right path. Who else could this guide be other than Wang Qinian? Village head, why did you agree to build the altar so quickly? Didn't they say it would affect the change in the surrounding spiritual energy? This is obviously our thing, why should we give it to them? Moreover, if it changes, would it affect us? A witty young man in the village raised his question. Wang Qinian turned his head and scolded, "Stupid. What is the surrounding spiritual energy, do you know it? Can you use it? Those devils from the 7 Stars sect have affected a lot of surrounding spiritual energy in the past 2 years, have you felt it? Have you shortened your lifespan? That's the Taoist immortal's business, why do you need to worry about it? Who do you think you are?" Being scolded like a dog's blood, the young man immediately shrank back, but obviously, he was still somewhat unconvinced. Wang Qinian sighed and said, "Not to mention, they have saved our lives. If it weren't for the wisdom sect's Taoist immortals, our Wang family village would have died without a burial ground. At that time, you people didn't see that overwhelming number of dead souls and wild ghosts, no need to mention how scary it was. Receiving their kindness, yet you still have the nerve to ask them for conditions." After hearing those words, many of the villagers' faces turned red. However, there were also some who, in the past 2 years, had practiced their thick skin, so they didn't think much of it. In any case, the Taoist immortals made their move, so why would they need to remember such a big favor? Although Wang Qinian was old, his mind was very clear. From the corner of his eyes, he knew what some people were thinking, he couldn't help but coldly snort. If you don't remember other people's kindness, at least remember other people's means. Right now, the Taoist immortals are willing to talk to you, but if they're not, then I don't need to say anything. The old village head's sneer was like a threat, which made everyone's heart calm down. When everyone was well behaved, Wang Qinian said, 2 years ago, we were deceived by that devil sect, the 7 Stars sect. Fortunately, the immortals of the Wisdom sect came to our rescue, so it didn't lead to a disaster. The Wisdom sect's immortals have taken a fancy to the surrounding spiritual energy in our Wang family village, so they plan to build an altar here. In my opinion, this is a good thing. First, we can repay him for saving our lives. Second, if the altar can be successfully built, it will be a great opportunity for our village. Some villagers were puzzled. What fortuitous encounter? Wang Qinian smiled and said, "Of course it's the opportunity to become an immortal." Someone below hesitated and said, "Isn't that what the devil cult said to deceive people? They keep saying that everyone can become an immortal, but after staying in our village for 2 years, other than setting up a few yin-yang life and death arrays, no one has become an immortal. Although Xiaohu has become their disciple, I don't think he has any great skills." These words were the heartfelt words of many villagers. The 7 Stars sect scam had been exposed, and along with it, the theory that everyone could become an immortal collapsed. This was a big blow to the countless villagers who were thirsty for immortal cultivation. How could Wang Qinian's heart not be stimulated? Originally, he thought that he could use the immortal method to prolong his lifespan. Moreover, after 2 years of business, after paying a lot of price, he did manage to get the publicity envoys promised to help him. However, after the 7 Stars sect's true colors were exposed, his original investment naturally went down the drain. However, the old man had a new idea. The 7 Stars sect, that devil sect, is a heinous sect, but I think their theory that everyone can become an immortal is not bad. Otherwise, why would they make up such a reason to deceive us? This statement was tantamount to deceiving themselves, but it was very popular. As soon as he said that, the people around him echoed in agreement. That's right, although the devils of the devil cult deserve to die, they said that everyone can become an immortal. I think they're not wrong. Those devils have committed heinous crimes, yet they can cultivate magic, so why can't we? One by one, not long after, the villagers firmly believed in becoming an immortal. Wang Qinian said with a smile, however, on the road to immortality, there must always be someone to guide us. The devils of the devil cult naturally won't help us, and those ordinary immortal cultivation sects probably won't look at us, the villagers. However, I think the wisdom sect's Taoist immortals are different, someone asked. Then should we go ask them to teach us immortal cultivation? Wang Qinian coldly humphed. You're not related to them, why should they teach you? That's why I said that building the altar is a big opportunity. When the altar is built, don't the wisdom sect's Taoist immortals need to look after it? Don't they need manpower to look after it? Don't they need to live here? Don't they need to take care of their daily life? Not to mention, I heard that after the altar is built, there will be an endless supply of spirit stones and elixirs. When the time comes, as long as the Taoist immortals reveal a little bit, it would be enough for our village to benefit endlessly. Therefore, speaking to this, Wang Qinian's expression turned serious. The wisdom sect's Taoist immortals building the altar is a big deal for our Wang family village. If anyone dares to cause trouble and drag us down in this matter, he will be the enemy of the entire village, without a doubt. Look at what you're saying, who dares to make trouble in this matter? That's right, village head, you don't trust us too much. When the time comes, as long as there's a need, we won't hesitate to go through water and tread on fire. Just when everyone was about to declare their military pledge. Suddenly, a sigh came from the crowd. That child Wang Lu, what should we do? The atmosphere suddenly turned cold. Wang Qinian sighed. That child Wang Lu, we've wronged him. I heard from Wang Fugui that Wang Lu has returned to the mountain, so he probably won't see him again. Then, he no longer said anything. No one said anything. A few days ago, the villagers regarded Wang Lu as an evildoer and a devil, so they gnashed their teeth in hatred. Wang Qinian, as the village head, even went to Wang Fugui's house and sternly reprimanded and threatened him. Now that the 7-star sex scam was exposed, their previous hatred suddenly became extremely embarrassing. However, at this moment, what could they say? After a while, Wang Qinian said, in Wang Fugui's house, let's all go and apologize together, lest that child Wang Lu comes back and causes any trouble. I just don't know what his so-called Lingjian school is. Thinking of the roar in Wang Fugui's house a few days ago, Wang Qinian's heart was extremely uneasy. At the same time, on the Dog-Ear Mountain outside the Wang family village, the leadership of the Wisdom sect held a plenary meeting. According to Wang Lu's idea, the 9 regions Intelligence Tax Administration Bureau would act in the name of Wisdom sect, and the high-level meeting would be held in the name of Intelligence Tax Administration Bureau. Wang Lu, you said you want to set up an altar here, is this for real? Among the several people, only the Holy Maiden dared to call him by his name. Wang Lu didn't mind, he nodded and said, of course it's for real. In any case, this is a formal sect, how could we not have an altar? The Holy Maiden was curious. Do you know how to build an altar? The dirty old man and Wu Feihua were also quite curious. An altar was not a rare thing. In the Wanxian League, there were thousands of sects, big or small, and basically all of them had their own altar. An altar could condense the surrounding spiritual energy and transform it into an infinite magical effect. It was a first-class practical facility, and also one of the foundations of a sect's cultivation. However, such a simple thing, like the 7-star sect, which could be considered as a rising sect in the lower 9 sects, no matter how hard they tried, they couldn't build it. An altar seemed simple, but the requirement of skill and cultivation was astonishingly high. Although the Seven Stars sect leader was a shoot-on stage cultivator, no matter what, he couldn't build a qualified altar. At present, the entire Seven Stars sect relied on their many years of savings. They bought a broken boat from the mysterious Sky Mansion and used the 5-element spirit array on the boat to gather the surrounding spiritual energy. The conversion rate wasn't high, and the things that could be converted were also very limited. This had already made many other sects endlessly envious. A regular altar, they didn't even dare to think about it. And Wang Lu, although he came from a famous sect, after all, he had only been cultivating for 2 years. His cultivation was still at the low-level qi cultivating stage, so how could he possibly know how to build an altar? Then they heard Wang Lu sneer. "You guys underestimate the top student of Spirit Sword sect too much." While speaking, Wang Lu took out a book from his mustard seed bag, Basic Altar Principles, written by Lu Li, and then began to read it page by page. Holy Maiden Feng Ling almost spurted out blood. You want to learn it on the spot?" Wang Lu sneered. "Learn on the spot? You're insulting the top student. Let me tell you, a real top student never has the concept of learning on the spot. I've done a preview a long time ago, and now I'm just reviewing it. This altar principle is at least a foundation establishment course, right? A long time ago, you haven't even completed the body forging stage. What's the use of learning this? A top student never asks if it's useful or not. A top student only asks how many points are there for this course. You're simply abnormal. But, what's the use of just knowing the theory? Not to mention you've been learning this for a long time. I'm afraid you don't have enough time to sharpen your spear before the exam, right?" Wang Lu's smile became even more contemptuous. "With your IQ, you naturally can't understand the efficiency of a top student's intensive study before the exam. Very well, respected top student, how long do you want to do this intensive study before the exam?" Wang Lu humphed. "Give me 2 minutes." With that, he flipped through the book and then closed it. "Okay, that's enough. You're just showing off, right? Originally, it's not that difficult. For something like an altar, as long as you calculate the geological characteristics, choose the type of altar according to the formula, and prepare the basic materials, the remaining problem is how to establish the spiritual energy tide and form the spiritual energy cycle. More than 90% of the basic altar principles is about the spiritual energy tide, and I've already memorized this part by heart." The Holy Maiden frowned for a moment, and then she had to admit that she didn't understand what Wang Lu said. Because she didn't have the conditions to become an immortal cultivator, Feng Ling never delved into the theory of immortal cultivation. Her understanding of immortal cultivation was nothing more than the fragmentary knowledge that the people in her sect talked about. Once it involved the formal theory, she was at a loss. However, the dirty old man and Wu Feihua were different. Especially the dirty old man, who had participated in several attempts to establish the altar, and the successive failures made him have a profound understanding of this path. The establishment of the spiritual energy tide was indeed the most important thing. It could be said that everything else, such as the selection of materials, the matching of arrays, and the selection of auspicious days, were all for this goal. The establishment of the spiritual energy tide was also extremely difficult. At least, for a group of unorthodox cultivators, it was as difficult as ascending to the sky. For those Wanxian League sects, as long as they had a Taoist Master King pill, they could use the deep meditation method to control the surrounding spiritual energy and form the spiritual energy tide cycle. However, how could a dignified Taoist master associate with the Seven Star sect? Not to mention that even if it was Taoist Master King pill, without the assistance of the Wanxian League's resources, it would not be easy for him to enter deep meditation. Then, with Wang Lu's mere qi cultivating stage cultivation base, how could he be compared with Taoist Master King pill? You don't need to worry about the specific operation. During this period of time, as long as you prepare the relevant materials, I'll do the rest. The dirty old man nodded to show his understanding. The establishment of the spiritual energy tide and the altar were the core techniques of any sect, so it was normal for Wang Lu to refuse to say it. However, how to prepare the materials. Of course, you're going to buy them. In any case, you're the local bully of the Blue River region, so you can't even find a material dealer, right? While saying that, Wang Lu took out a pen and paper from his mustard seed bag, scribbled a list, and then threw it to the dirty old man. Buy according to this list, it won't cost much. The dirty old man took the list and looked at it. He immediately felt a mouthful of blood rushing up to his throat. 7th rank fine gold, 4th rank profound earth, 6th rank colored glass fire. Director, you're crazy. The nearby Wu Feihua's eyes widened. These things easily cost hundreds of spirit stones, how could we afford them? This time, it was Wang Lu's turn to be surprised. When you occupied a prefectural city, hundreds of thousands of spirit stones were nothing to you, but now, you can't even afford a few thousand spirit stones? The dirty old man immediately began to pour out his grievances. Hundreds of thousands of spirit stones are the sect's income, not our personal income. The sect's operating cost is high, and the sect leader and the several elders are desperately plundering, so in the end, there's not much that can be divided into my hands. Moreover, I also want to cultivate. The cost of elixirs is also not small, so I can't save up a few spirit stones. Wang Lu sighed. In short, we just don't have money. Okay, I'll pay for it first. Then he opened his mustard seed bag, and a sparkling and translucent jade stone came out, blinding everyone's eyes. These are all top-quality spirit stones. Even though the dirty old man had been plundering for many years in the name of the Seven Stars sect, he had never seen so many top-quality spirit stones. This kind of excellent quality spirit stone with rich spiritual energy reserve was equivalent to more than 10 ordinary spirit stones. Wang Lu casually revealed a little bit from his pocket, but it was already comparable to his past several years of accumulation. The holy maiden was also extremely surprised. The non-phase peak master and disciple had always been known for their poverty, so where did Wang Lu get so many spirit stones? Of course, it was from the sect's points. As the Spirit Sword sect's #1 disciple, Wang Lu was poor in everything except points. Take these 500 spirit stones and prepare the materials in 2 days. Then, we'll set up the altar in the Wang family village. Hey, no matter what, this is the headquarters of the Intelligence Revenue Service, so let's make it more beautiful. Chapter 97. 2 days later, dirty old man He Yun and Wu Feihua hurriedly rushed back to the Dog-Ear Mountain. Their complexions were extremely ugly. The 500 spirit stones that Wang Lu gave was actually a lot more than what was needed for the purchase. Thus, it was only natural that the remaining part would be the errand fee for the two of them. Although Wang Lu didn't say it clearly, both of them thought that with the shrewdness of the director, his intention in giving such a generous amount of money must be obvious. However, when the two of them contacted the nearest merchant and were ready to purchase, they were ruthlessly ripped off. That merchant only glanced at the list and immediately quoted a price, 600 spirit stones. This was higher than the budget given by Wang Lu, so how could He Yun agree? However, the other party had already seen through He Yun's background. If he didn't want to buy, then so be it. How could He Yun dare not to buy? Wang Lu had set a time limit of 2 days. If he exceeded the time limit, he simply didn't dare to imagine the consequences. Not to mention these miscellaneous materials, logically speaking, should be worth at most 300 spirit stones. How could the price increase so much? After asking around, he finally understood that these materials, if sold in the mysterious Sky Mansion, were naturally cheap. However, with He Yun's and Wu Feihua's status, they simply couldn't enter the mysterious Sky Mansion's door. Thus, this was equivalent to a black market transaction, so the price was naturally high. In desperation, He Yun and Wu Feihua had to bow their heads. After a long wrangling, the final transaction price was 500 spirit stones. This was tantamount to a wasted trip for the two of them. Their original fantasies of running an errand for a sky-high price had vanished into thin air, however, this was normal. The two of them were still criminals, so how could Wang Lu be so kind as to give them the opportunity to make a fortune? However, thinking about the altar that they were going to build, the two of them became spirited. They had been working hard for the Seven Stars sect for many years, but they had never enjoyed the benefits of an altar. Moreover, judging from the materials purchased this time, the director's ambition was lofty, and the altar that he wanted to build was quite good. Although with their knowledge, they still couldn't identify the specific type, but even if it was a 9th-rank altar, its power was far superior to the Seven Stars sect second-hand wind-splitting shuttle's 5-element spirit array. Combined with the relatively rich spiritual energy in the Wang family village, they could condense at least 100 spirit stones every day. It didn't seem much, but in a year, it would be tens of thousands. Not to mention, condensing spirit stones was only one of the most inconspicuous functions of the altar. The only problem was, could this altar really be built? It's not that the dirty old man and the others looked down on Wang Lu. In fact, 2 days ago, after Wang Lu retrieved the sword of Mount Kuan from the village, in order to further establish his prestige, he fought with He Yun. Although he was a low-level foundation establishment cultivator, he still couldn't break through the opponent's 3-feet sword defense. Henceforth, there was no longer any contempt in his heart. It was just that, the disparity between low-grade Qi condensation and Tao Master King Pill was truly like the difference between heaven and earth. What exactly was he going to do with the tide of spiritual energy? On this clear autumn day, the weather turned cool, but the Wang family village was bustling with activity. The simple villagers decorated the village with lanterns and streamers to welcome the arrival of the immortals. There was even a couplet hanging at the entrance of the village. Although the writing was nonsensical, the enthusiasm of the villagers to welcome the arrival of a deity and guide was undeniable. In the midst of this enthusiasm, the comrades of the Intelligence Revenue Service, the Wisdom Sect's Taoist immortals floated on the auspicious clouds. This time, all the members of the Wisdom Sect were dispatched. The Holy Maiden Feng Ling took the lead, followed by the Vice Sect leader He Yun and Elder Wu Feihua. Finally, the last one was an unremarkable fatty. When Wang Qinian curiously asked, the Holy Maiden lightly said, "Oh, that's the strong man used to build the altar." The fatty burst into tears. In any case, he was a genuine cultivator of Spirit Sword Sect, but his position in the Intelligence Revenue Service was not even as good as Wu Feihua. Fortunately, the so-called rank was basically nonsense. Whoever did it was just a word from the director. However, Wang Qinian and the others didn't dare to neglect this chubby strong man. After a while, they asked about his well-being. When had the fatty ever experienced this kind of situation? In the past, when he was the son of the state preceptor, although he was surrounded by a crowd of people, he was never surrounded by the villagers. In desperation, the fatty had no choice but to keep his mouth shut, which really gave him the image of a strong man. Under the welcome of the villagers, the group came to the predetermined location of the altar. Needless to say, the location was, of course, personally chosen by Wang Lu. It was the village head's house. This location was also a reward for Wang Qinian's ranting at Wang Fugui's house a few days ago. Wang Qinian didn't know about this. Seeing the several Taoist immortals stopped in front of his house, he curiously asked, "Excuse me, Taoist immortals, this is," the Holy Maiden Feng Ling lightly said, "building the altar here?" Feng Ling nodded. "Yes, the feng shui here is the best, so it's the best place to build the altar." Wang Qinian was immediately stunned. Then what about my house?" Feng Ling smiled. "Of course it's going to be demolished. It doesn't matter, I will let the strong man build a new home for you." But... Wang Qinian was still struggling, but before he could open his mouth, he heard the Holy Maiden smile. "Oh, you don't want to? It doesn't matter, then we won't build it. Old pervert. He Yun, let's go." The group of people turned around and left, which made Wang Qinian anxious. "Taoist immortals, don't go, don't go. Just demolish it, just demolish it." "Good, then let's do it." "Wait, there are still things in my house." The holy maiden frowned. Oh, you're so troublesome. Sometimes you demolish it, and sometimes you don't. Can't you be a bit more reliable? Do you want us to wait here for you to slowly move? Wang Qinian was dumbfounded. He paused for a moment before he heard a villager behind him say, "Village chief, didn't you say that the construction of the altar is a huge matter? If anyone dares to drag us down, then," Wang Qinian cursed in his heart, but he still put on a smiling face. "Demolish, demolish, demolish." As soon as his voice fell, he heard a muffled rumbling sound. The dirty old man let out a low shout and simultaneously lit up 3 talismans in his hands, releasing a huge amount of magical power. In an instant, the village head's house was flattened. The many years of tamped brick walls, thick beams, neat tiles, were compressed into 2 palms thick layers in an instant, and then they sunk further into the ground until they were level with the ground. For a low-level foundation establishment cultivator, the effect of this spell could be described as amazing. The dirty old man smiled as he patted away the remnants of the talismans in his palm. He thought that thanks to Wang Lu, who gave him a few pages of the Immortal Cultivation ancient book, in just a few days of practice, the internal injuries that he suffered in the Marquis County were completely healed. His power was almost restored, and some of his subtle skills were even more refined. Although this Mount Tai pressing down was supported by the power of the talismans, it was released so quickly and its power was so exquisite that even at his peak, it was still beyond his power. Sure enough, after surviving a disaster, there would be good fortune later on. In just a few days, he had already made such progress. Flattering this kind of famous sex disciple really has endless benefits. Unfortunately, when he was in the 7 Stars sect, he didn't have that kind of opportunity. While the dirty old man was full of joy, the dust that filled the sky fell to the ground. Next to the flat ground, there was a large group of villagers with their jaws dropped to the ground, as well as the village head who wanted to cry but had no tears. The dirty old man chuckled. "What do you think? Isn't the demolition beautiful?" Wang Qinian replied with a trembling voice, "Senior Immortal's spell is superb, the demolition is beautiful, very beautiful. You have good eyesight. Rest assured, when the altar is built, I will ask a strong man to help you build a new house. It will be even more magnificent than this broken house." Of course, this was also Wang Lu's instruction, which meant that the Intelligence Revenue Service's work must be clear in rewards and punishments. Wang Qinian was ignorant for 2 years and had done all kinds of foolish things, so he should be punished. However, the old village head had been conscientious for decades. Even if he didn't have any meritorious deeds, he still put in a lot of hard work, so why should he be homeless? After the forced dismantling, the dirty old man moved his fingers and pinched out a technique. Inside his mustard seed bag, a mountain of materials piled up like a mountain flew out and arranged themselves into a circular array on the flat ground in an orderly manner. The amount of these materials and the arrangement had already been planned by Wang Lu. After the dirty old man finished arranging the materials according to the order, he suddenly stopped a certain spell. At the same time, in the middle of the circular array, an ordinary youth figure appeared. The dirty old man and the others immediately kowtowed. "Greetings, sect leader." After the invisibility spell was lifted, Wang Lu fully displayed the self-cultivation of a professional actor. With an indifferent look, he waved his hand. "Okay, no need to kowtow. My time in the lower realm is limited, so let's get to work. You guys tell the villagers to stay away, don't get in the way." When Wang Qinian and the others saw Wang Lu appear, they thought that he was really an immortal descending to the lower realm. Their hearts were indescribably excited. Unfortunately, before they could kowtow, they were dispersed by Wu Feihua and the others, making a spacious stage for the performance. He Yun and the others were looking forward to the next performance. With a low-level qi cultivating stage cultivation base, how could he establish a spiritual energy tide and then build an altar? And with Wang Lu's skill, what kind of altar was he going to build? Judging from the materials, it was likely to be above the 8th rank. The Jade Forest sect, where the dirty old man came from, only had an 8th rank fire altar, which made the surrounding immortal cultivation sects envious. Holy Maiden Feng Ling's heart was also filled with curiosity. Although she didn't understand the concept of an altar, she had seen it a lot in the Spirit Sword Mountain. The Lingjian school occupied the place with the richest spiritual energy in the Blue River region, so naturally, they wouldn't let it go to waste. There were many altars in the sect, most of which were made by the sixth elder Lu Li. The elder who was in charge of the sect's financial power was a genius in altar technology. When he was still in the Shudan stage, he completed his first altar, the 7th rank fire altar. And looking at Wang Lu's current appearance, his ambition seemed to be even higher than Lu Li's. As the focus of attention, Wang Lu expressionlessly paced around the array, slightly adjusted the materials of the altar around him, and then slowly closed his eyes. In an instant, the complex world around him disappeared without a trace. In Wang Lu's mind, there was only the sea of spiritual energy. If one wanted to build an altar, there were only two ways. One was to use the powerful primordial spirit of a core formation stage or a quasi-golden core formation stage to manipulate the spiritual chi of heaven and earth and release it several times, forcing it to form a tide of spiritual chi. The other was to carefully calculate the circulation of the spiritual chi of heaven and earth and make the best use of the situation, using the method of moving 1,000 kilograms with little effort to complete this miracle. In the past, Elder Lu Li relied on his keen primordial spirit to accurately find the nodes of the movement of the spiritual energy and build the altar with his low-level Shudan stage cultivation base. Elder Lu Li had the first-rank heavenly spirit root, and his aptitude was among the top 10 heavenly sword hall elders. If it were Fang He or Lu Xian, they would never be able to do it. However, Wang Lu's void spirit root was much more sensitive than the common heavenly spirit root. Even if his cultivation base was not high enough and his primordial spirit was weak, he could still see the movement of spiritual energy within a radius of several hundred meters. Of course, just being able to see was far from enough. Next, he had to use his own strength to drive the spiritual energy, gather it, and spread it. Following a specific rhythm, it would form a spiritual energy tide. This step was the real difficulty. According to Elder Lu Li's textbook, if he wanted to smoothly drive the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, he had to temper his primordial spirit to the level of 90% virtual and 1% real, which was roughly the middle level of the foundation building realm. This was only the theoretical value. In the past, Lu Li had to practice until he was half virtual and half real before he could build an altar. Wang Lu's current primordial spirit was a complete mess. Not to mention that it didn't have any substance. Even its virtual body hadn't been completely condensed. It had almost no ability to restrain the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. However, if he wanted to control the spiritual energy, he didn't necessarily need to release the power of his primordial spirit. What the 90% virtual and 1% real primordial spirit could do, Wang Lu could also use other tools to do. In the inner mansion, the Emperor Bone trembled, and the 206 jade pillars simultaneously took a deep breath. Chapter 98. The Intelligence Revenue Services Chief Wang Lu took a deep breath. The next moment, the weather changed and the waves surged. The dirty old man He Yun and Wu Feihua's complexion changed dramatically. Although their cultivation level was not high, they didn't have high-grade spirit root, and their perception of the surrounding spiritual energy was not as good as the new disciples of Lingjian school. But how could they not feel the turbulent spiritual energy around them? Wang Lu inhaled and the surrounding spiritual energy within a radius of 300 meters roared and gathered. This was partly due to his own spirit root attribute, and partly due to the power of the array. But, it was a radius of 300 meters. Even if it was an ordinary Taoist Master King pill, could he have such a vast spiritual energy field? The dirty old man tried his best to absorb the spiritual energy, but it only affected the space within a few meters around him. At the same time, Wang Lu, who was in the center of the storm, also felt a great pressure. This kind of violent absorption method was rarely used after he entered the right track in his chi cultivating stage. Now, in his inner mansion, he had formed a vortex-like spiritual energy cycle, Relying on the super permeability of the void spirit root, the spiritual energy gathering speed was enough to meet his needs. Although this kind of violent absorption was amazingly efficient, it also caused a lot of damage to the body. The huge wave of spiritual energy crashed into the wall of the void spirit root, but it only produced a platinum rain. However, the 206 soaring sword bones had to bear a huge pressure. These non-phase sword bones were the only channel to communicate with the inside and outside, but its capacity was limited. For an ordinary cultivator, it might be enough, but if Wang Lu used all his strength to absorb the spiritual energy, the 206 sword bones would immediately operate at full capacity. Now, with the assistance of the array, it was even more overloaded. Golden liquid continuously flowed out from the tip of the sword bones, but the jade pillar itself trembled incessantly, as if it was about to explode. After an unknown period of time, this round of spiritual energy gathering finally came to an end. The platinum rain evaporated and turned back into the surrounding spiritual energy. Wang Lu suddenly felt his whole body relax. Of course, in the eyes of the outside world, it looked like a huge wave of spiritual qi was rushing towards them, and the spiritual qi that had gathered just now was rushing back with an even more violent momentum. This change was very violent. The dirty old man and Wu Feihua subconsciously retreated 2 steps. At the same time, they felt the circulation of magical power within their body was faintly affected. Their complexion couldn't help but change. What an overbearing spiritual qi tide. Retracting and releasing, gathering and dispersing, it was like the ebb and flow of the sea. It operated in cycles, and that was how it got its name. And since it operated in cycles, it naturally meant that it would happen more than once. After a while, Wang Lu activated the sword bone again and took a deep breath. This time, even more spiritual energy was gathered. Affected by the previous absorption, the range of absorption this time had expanded by a full 50 meters. This was also the core of the spiritual energy tide. Every time it was released, more and more spiritual energy would be drawn into the cycle. The cycle would repeat, and the spiritual energy would roll like a snowball. Naturally, the pressure on Wang Lu himself was even greater. If the sword bone just trembled, then during the second round of absorption, he could even hear the sword bone issuing a painful buzzing sound. And the platinum rain inside his jade mansion also poured down like a waterfall. But this was not enough. During the third round of absorption, the spiritual energy within 400 meters crazily surged, and the total amount was almost doubled compared to the first round. The intensity of the impact also increased by 30 to 40%. Wang Lu clearly felt the overwhelming pain in his bones, and he knew that he had indeed been injured. Just by absorbing spiritual energy, he was able to injure the indestructible non-phase sword bone, so one could imagine the power of this spiritual energy tide. However, according to Wang Lu's expectation, this was still not enough. He needed to absorb at least 3 more rounds to accumulate enough energy to build a spiritual energy tide that could release and retract on its own. And in the last 3 rounds, each time, he feared that he would be crushed to pieces. However, who told him to cultivate the non-phase sword bone? The thing that the non-phase sword bone was least afraid of was injury. As long as it wasn't a devastating blow that was difficult to recover from, each injury would only make the non-phase sword bone tougher. Although the process was painful, why would Wang Lu care about it? Thus, the 4th round, the 5th round, the 6th round. When the spiritual energy within the radius of 500 meters was swept in by this crazy tide, Wang Lu knew that the time was almost ripe. Next, it was the real core link, which was to add his own influence at the junction of the ebb and flow of the tide, so that this artificially formed tide could operate spontaneously, thus forming a real tide. To do this, it did not require too much strength, but it required extremely accurate calculation and grasp. And this was precisely the strong point of a top student. Long before he personally put it into practice, Wang Lu had simulated and deduced it several times on the Dog-Ear Mountain, so that he was sure that his calculation would not be wrong. When the 6th round of absorption and retraction ended, when the spiritual energy tide's influence expanded to more than 500 meters, As long as he added the spiral force just right, it could form a permanent spiritual energy tide. And this spiral, he had already prepared it in his inner mansion for a long time. Taking advantage of the fleeting moment of tranquility after the 6th round of absorption and retraction, Wang Lu endured the severe pain in his inner mansion and prepared to extract the spiral force. Next, during the 7th round of absorption, this spiral force would trigger a miraculous effect. However, at this time, buzz. In Wang Lu's field of vision, the spiritual energy, which had been restrained by the surging of the 6th round of the tide and began to move in a regular cycle, suddenly trembled irregularly. Holy **T. Suddenly, Wang Lu was restless. To build an altar with the cultivation base of low-level qi cultivating stage, this was not something that could be done just by relying on the void spirit root. Each step had been repeatedly calculated and deduced by Wang Lu. Even if there was a slight difference, the final result would be 1,000 miles off. And this irregular tremor was precisely that millimeter difference. Without thinking about the reason for the error, Wang Lu calmed his heart, put the prepared spiral force back into his inner mansion, and then quickly issued an order to the non-phase sword bone. Suck it. The best way to smooth out the error was to submerge it in the surging waves of the spiritual energy tide. Wang Lu had high hopes for the construction of this altar. How could he not consider the possibility of an accident? Therefore, when the accident really happened, although Wang Lu was surprised, he didn't panic. The 7th round of the spiritual energy tide successfully erased the trace of the trembling. When the tide receded and the next round of the tide was about to rise, Wang Lu once again took out the spiral force from his inner mansion. But at this time, buzz. Another inexplicable tremble completely disrupted Wang Lu's rhythm. And this time, Wang Lu was not only restless. One accident could be said to be an accident, but 2 times in a row, and they came so strangely, then there must be a reason. However, no matter what the reason is, if you want to stop me from building the altar, there's no way. The 8th round of the tide, smooth out this damn error for me. At this time, each round of the tide surged, which was a great burden on Wang Lu's body. Although the non-phase sword bone was extremely tough, under the crazy spiritual energy scouring, there were signs of complete collapse. But at this time, Wang Lu was also in a difficult situation. After the 6th round, the spiritual energy tide entered a gradually strong channel. Without the help of external force, it would automatically retract and release, and the strength would become stronger and stronger. Of course, it was still far from the perfect spiritual energy tide. If left unchecked, the spiritual energy tide would continue to become more and more intense, and when it reached the extreme point, it would suddenly disperse. But before that, Wang Lu would have long been overwhelmed by the crazy spiritual energy. According to the estimation, the strength of the non-phase sword bone could only last until the 10th round. After the 10th round, the tendons and bones would break, and the inner mansion would collapse, without a doubt, and now, the spiritual energy tide had reached the 9th round. Wang Lu's only hope was to find the cause of the error in the next 2 rounds, and then erase it. However, this task was really not easy. The abnormal tremor of the spiritual energy was not man-made, because each tremor was precisely produced when the spiritual energy tide surged to a certain extent. According to what Wang Lu had learned, it was very likely that he had accidentally touched some kind of feng shui node. This was really strange. These days, Wang Lu had already explored the geomancy of the Dog-Ear Mountain, and he had also roughly figured out the law of the surrounding spiritual energy. Otherwise, he would not dare to easily build this altar. If there was any hidden feng shui node in the Dog-Ear Mountain, he should have been able to find it in the past few days. Unfortunately, this was the case, and he could only blame himself for his poor eyesight. While Wang Lu was desperately thinking about the cause of the error, the 9th round of impact finally arrived. The severe pain in his body made him black out, and for a few breaths, his mind went blank. However, this severe stimulation also brought him a touch of inspiration. If the error could not be eliminated, then wouldn't it be better to incorporate it into the formula and make it a part of the entire spiritual energy system? It was almost equivalent to a super strong error correction. Then, as long as he slightly changed the original formula, he could smoothly bypass the error and establish the tide. The only problem now was, could he still adjust the formula? Because the 10th round of the tide had arrived. Wang Lu's theoretical limit was after the 10th round of the tide, but just now, the strength of the 9th round was enough to make him temporarily unconscious, and the 10th round was even more powerful. He was likely to be crushed by the 11th round of the tide while he was unconscious. However, at this time, there was no point in panicking. In the face of crisis, Wang Lu raised all his spirit. The non-phase emperor bone crazily rotated, constantly giving instructions to the other sword bones. Each sword bone moved, each adjusted its angle, and released the accumulated spiritual energy to deal with the future impact. In theory, under the strong impact of the 11th round, which was enough to shake the Taoist of King Pil, these efforts could at most increase the survival rate by 1%. However, the quality of a professional adventurer was reflected here. Even if it was only 1%, it was worth 100% effort. And just when Wang Lu was ready to face the test, another unexpected change happened. The sword bone was unsheathed. Wang Lu's non-phase sword bone was now in the 9th realm. Most of the 206 bones in his body were actually the bones of the scabbard. There were only a few real sword bones, which were distributed in both of his hands, which effectively improved the flexibility of the non-phase sword art. However, its real function was still far from being played. The next step should be to unsheath the sword bone, changing from passive to active, and further improving the defense. That was the 10th realm. Originally, Wang Lu thought that he had to first transform all of the 206 bones into sword bones before he could unsheath the sword, which he had confirmed with his master. However, under the crisis, the sword bones automatically reacted, and even without the command of the emperor bone, they unsheathed themselves, which greatly exceeded Wang Lu's expectation. But this was a good thing. Unsheathing the sword bone and hiding the blade were two completely different concepts. The moment the sword bones were unsheathed, the oncoming wave of spiritual energy seemed to be separated by an invisible sword, and the pressure was greatly reduced. The sword divided the huge wave. This was the power of the unsheathed sword bone. Although because his cultivation base was not perfect enough, the 206 sword bones were not completely cultivated, so facing the huge wave of spiritual energy that came from all directions, they couldn't completely offset its power. However, overall, Wang Lu's pressure was still offset by 30 to 40%. This meant that he could withstand at least 2 more waves. Moreover, the moment the sword bones broke through, the scabbard inside his body reacted, and the connection with the spiritual energy became more intimate. The cracks that were originally formed by the scabbard were immediately eliminated. It was probably equivalent to the full health after the upgrade. Taking advantage of this rare opportunity, Wang Lu quickly adjusted the formula and changed the structure of the spiral in his inner mansion. Before long, a brand new perfect spiral appeared in his inner mansion. Next, as long as he extracted it, a perfect spiritual energy tide would emerge. And then, the ideal altar in his mind should also take shape. As the altar for the establishment of his sect, Wang Lu carefully chose a 6th-grade altar, the solidifying jade altar. Its specialty was that it had an extremely high degree of refinement of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Even in a place like the Wang family village, where the concentration of spiritual energy was not enough to be called a true paradise, it could still be refined into high-grade spirit stones and other precious materials. Of course, the grade of spirit stones and materials was actually not important to Wang Lu. What really attracted him to the solidifying jade altar was that this was the only 6th-grade altar that he could build with his low-grade qi cultivation. The key to its construction was the extremely high spiritual pressure when establishing the tide, and this was also the only specialty that Wang Lu could bring out. It was practically a match made in heaven. Facing the last round of spiritual energy tide, Wang Lu extracted the spiral in his inner mansion. In a split second, it collided with the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, triggering a mysterious reaction. The scattered materials for the altar slowly floated into the air, and were swept up by the combined force of the spiritual energy and the spiral. They automatically decomposed and assembled, forming the foundation of the altar. In a moment, the embryonic form of the altar had already appeared. However, at this moment, in Wang Lu's field of vision, a shocking wave soared into the sky. F***CK. Again. Wang Lu did not even have time to be surprised. His eyes were firmly attracted by the wave of something. The range of the last round of the tide had expanded to a radius of more than 700 meters, so he just happened to see the source of the change in the spiritual energy. The source of the change in the spiritual energy was actually his home. Of course, it was not the house in the east of the village, but under the old house where he was born. A strange stone was shallowly buried in the soil. It was no different from other rocks, but under the super strong impact of the last round of spiritual energy, it stirred up, causing the spiritual energy to surge into the sky, and its body also broke out of the soil. Like a sharp sword. Wang Lu laughed at himself in his heart. That stone was buried by himself more than 10 years ago. At that time, he felt a wave of sorrow in his heart, as if he had buried his whole life. Unfortunately, at that time, his body was young, and his mind was not fully developed. His memory was vague, and later, unconsciously, he actually forgot about it. That was an incomparably precious comet fragment. It carried incredible energy. As a professional adventurer, when calculating the spiritual energy tide, he actually neglected such an important factor. It was simply a blunder. Unfortunately, it was too late to say anything at this time. That fragment, pushed by the sweeping and whistling spiritual energy, fiercely sprang out of the soil, flying rapidly towards Wang Lu. Its speed was so fast that even little Ling Er did not have time to react. In the blink of an eye, that fragment was wrapped by the spiritual energy and rushed into the center of the spiritual energy tide. The embryonic jade altar, which had originally already formed, was invaded by a foreign object and suddenly twisted. Wang Lu tightly pursed his lips, persisted for a moment, and made a decision in his heart. He said in a fierce voice. "Fuck you, I don't care anymore." Chapter 99. The expected supernova explosion did not appear. When Wang Lu closed his eyes and raised the defense of his non-phase sword bone to the limit, all he got was a strange silence. After a while, a hesitant woman's voice sounded, "Wang. Sect leader, what kind of special ceremony are you holding?" Wang Lu opened his eyes. Not far away, Holy Maiden Feng Ling looked at him with a teasing and puzzled face. He then turned his head. The natural scenery of the Wang family village was still beautiful. There was no big explosion, nor was there a stormy spiritual energy surge. Beside him, there was a gray sphere as tall as a person quietly lying on the ground. Wang Lu coughed and waved his hand to signal the dirty old man and the others to take action. The old man was tactful, so he nodded and then, together with Wu Feihua, set up an illusion technique, covering the scenery dozens of meters around Wang Lu. This was also a contingency plan. Once there was an accident in the process of building the altar, they would use the illusion technique to cover it, so that the villagers would not be able to see the flaw. With the illusion technique as cover, Wang Lu had nothing to worry about. He curiously reached out and touched the surface of the sphere. All of a sudden, his primordial spirit trembled. Wang Lu was surprised to find that this gray sphere actually established an inseparable connection with his primordial spirit. At the same time, he could feel a gentle suction, which rolled the surrounding spiritual energy and slowly sucked it into the sphere. A moment later, the spiritual energy dispersed. Although the scale was not large, this was indeed the characteristic of the spiritual energy tide. After gawking for a moment, Wang Lu slightly opened his mouth, showing an incredulous look. "What is this, a special type of altar?" The solidified jade altar was supposed to be pure and flawless, but that strange comet fragment mixed in and turned it into this thing? What was this? Had there ever been a spherical altar in 9 regions? Wang Lu tried to recall. In his impression, there was no similar record in the altar encyclopedia written by Elder Luli. Other ancient books, such as the Nine Regions Book of Strange Objects, and so on, also didn't mention the existence of this spherical altar. Even with the erudition of Spirit Sword Sect's top student, he couldn't identify what was so wonderful about this special altar. However, if he couldn't judge it by relying on book knowledge, he would just have to investigate it on the spot. Wang Lu closed his eyes and let his primordial spirit seep into the inside of the ball. He observed its internal structure through the connection between them. With his knowledge, he should be able to determine the characteristics of the altar very quickly. However, after his primordial spirit entered, he discovered that the interior of the sphere was actually chaos. The moment the spiritual qi was sucked in, it immediately turned into a chaotic substance, completely unobservable. Tisk, as expected of a special type altar, high-end and extravagant. There was no trace of the internal structure, so there was no way to analyze the characteristics of the altar. Therefore, Wang Lu could only roughly determine that it was between the 6th and 7th level based on the intensity of the spiritual energy tide and the difference between the spiritual energy inhalation and exhalation. This was slightly inferior to the ideal jade congealing altar. Wang Lu was slightly disappointed, but he soon discovered that things were not so simple. Although the intensity of the spitting spiritual energy wasn't great, every time it did so, it seemed to be a little bit more than the last time. After waiting patiently for 10 rounds, Wang Lu confirmed his judgment with his keen perception of spiritual energy. He had seen the characteristics of this kind of altar in a book before. It could be described with 2 simple words: growth type. Interesting, there was an unwritten rule in the cultivation world that anything, whether it was a magic treasure, a flying sword, or an altar, as long as it had the words growth type in it, its value would be doubled. This was because this property was too rare. There were many growth-type altars in the immortal cultivation world. According to his experience, if the newly built altars had attributes of the 6th or 7th stage, it wouldn't be strange for the altars to be upgraded by 1 or 2 stages after their growth potential was fully excavated. This was much better than the expected result. The only problem now was that although this ball-shaped altar could absorb spiritual energy, its internal structure was completely chaotic, and he couldn't control its output at all. Wang Lu tried 7 or 8 spells in a row, but there was no reaction at all. F***ck, a Pishio-shaped altar. However, since his elegant tricks were ineffective, he decided to use some of his cheap tricks. With a sigh, Wang Lu exerted all his strength and kicked the ball-shaped altar viciously. In the next moment, the ball-shaped altar shook violently and spun crazily. Soon, a mouth opened at the top, and an object fell to the ground. The object was crystal clear and radiant. Wang Lu looked down and said, F***ck. Isn't this a top-grade spirit stone? In terms of transformation ability, it means that it can transform spiritual items of 8th level and above. The transformation efficiency is not bad. With a trace of excitement, Wang Lu reached out his hand and injected some spiritual energy into the altar. Then, he kicked the ball-shaped altar again, and the ball-shaped altar began to spin again. A moment later, with a puff, another object shot out from the top of the ball-shaped altar. It was pitch-black coal. F***ck. It spits out coal. Isn't this altar too shameless? Then, Wang Lu injected more spiritual energy into the altar, but the ball-shaped altar refused to move. After thinking for a while, Wang Lu realized that the ball-shaped altar had spat twice just now was probably because it had just been formed, and there were still remnants of the spiritual energy tied inside. Now, the amount of spiritual energy he injected into the altar was not enough to complete the transformation. Although Wang Lu's cultivation strength was limited and he didn't have enough spiritual energy, he had a lot of spirit stones. He took out some spirit stones from his mustard seed bag, refined them, and injected spiritual energy into the altar. After several attempts, he roughly figured out the rules of this ball-shaped altar. The output of this altar was completely random. However, the amount of spiritual energy needed for each spit was fixed, which was about the amount of spiritual energy contained in 130 standard spirit stones. If it was less than this amount, the altar wouldn't spin no matter how hard it was kicked. If it was more than this amount, the altar would store the remaining spiritual energy. If it was more than this amount, it would simply spit it out multiple times. In Wang Lu's view, this ball-shaped altar was simply a lottery box. 130 spirit stones could be used to draw a prize, and the prize was random. The fluctuations were enormous. Wait, this setting seemed familiar. Wang Lu was stunned for a moment, then he fiercely clenched his teeth and took out the last batch of spirit stones that he had kept hidden. There were several hundred of them, and then he injected spiritual energy into the altar. The dirty old man and the others were so shocked that their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Hundreds of high-grade spirit stones. Moreover, they were used as sacrificial fuel for the altar. Director, you must be the god of wealth from the Lingjian school, right? Who didn't know that the importance of the altar lay in the fact that it could use the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to produce spirit stones and other things? But you actually went against this principle, recklessly wasting natural resources. When Wang Lu threw all the spirit stones into the altar, the gray ball suddenly swelled up, as if it was about to burst from the astonishing amount of spiritual energy. Then it began to spin crazily, no longer needing anyone to kick it. In Wang Lu's expectant eyes, the top of the ball opened up from time to time, making a powerful spray. Once, twice, thrice, 11 times in a row. Wang Lu was overjoyed. Just now, the total number of spirit stones was only 128, which was equivalent to 1,280 ordinary spirit stones, which was not even enough for 10 sprays. However, this altar actually gave him a discount. As for the result of the spray, Wang Lu helplessly looked at the 5 piles of gravel on the ground. Of course, calling them gravel was too harsh. They were essentially defective spirit stones, not even low-grade spirit stones. However, they contained a lot of spiritual energy. For the dirty old man and the others, it was a delicious meal, if they didn't take into account the raw materials of the pile of defective spirit stones, which were more than 10 high-grade spirit stones. These 5 sprays could be considered as a big loss. Of course, using spirit stones as raw materials and converting them into spirit stones by the altar itself would cause a great loss. The advantage of the altar was that it could stabilize the spiritual energy. In terms of conversion rate, unless it was a high-grade altar, it would always make people anxious. In addition to these 5 piles of gravel, there were also 2 pieces of pitch-black iron. Wang Lu's sharp eyes recognized that they were the most valuable treasure that the mortal world's martial artists yearned for, black iron. The fatty's black iron sword was made from this. However, in the immortal cultivation world, it was not a great treasure. In addition to the black iron, there was also a piece of cloud mud, a mass of solid water, and a fire flint, all of which were 8th rank spirit objects. Their value was around dozens of spirit stones. Seeing these things, the dirty old man and the others were very envious. No matter what, they were still 8th rank spirit objects. Their 7 stars sex 5 elements spirit array couldn't even condense a 9th rank spirit object. However, Wang Lu simply didn't put them in his eyes. His eyes turned and were firmly attracted by the last thing. It was a crystal clear, perfectly round, and glossy spirit pill. The spiritual energy inside the pill circulated like water ripples. Wang Lu sighed. He had already recognized it, a 5th rank spirit pill, water cloud pill. Who knew why this inconspicuous round ball could use the surrounding spiritual energy as its raw material and directly spit out a 5th rank spirit pill? This processing process was completely unscientific. The input and output were even more unscientific. This 5th rank spirit pill could be sold in the mysterious sky mansion for at least 1,000 standard spirit stones, directly earning back the cost. Wang Lu held back his laughter and shook his head. 11 consecutive shocks. TSK, my luck is not bad. From the input and output perspective, this luck was not only not bad, but excellent, even against the heavens' will. Exchanging spirit stones for spirit stones, even a high-rank altar would lose 20 to 30% of its value. As for a 6th or 7th rank altar, the loss would be at least more than half. However, Wang Lu's 11 consecutive shocks actually made a lot of money. The so-called 11 consecutive shocks only included the last 5th rank spirit pill. In fact, according to the standards of the dirty old man and the others, being able to spit out an 8th rank spirit pill was already a great shock. Wang Lu's 11 consecutive shocks were, in fact, 6 shocks, and one of them was the best quality shock. If this was not against the heaven's will, then what was? Wang Lu's mouth said that it was not bad, but it was purely a pretentious act. Unfortunately, there was no one next to him to echo him, so his pretentious act wasn't satisfying enough. After collecting the spirit objects and elixirs on the ground, Wang Lu had no interest in continuing to test the water. First, good fortune and misfortune were closely related, and second, it was not the time to draw the lottery. As an actor, he was still standing on the stage, so he needed to continue to display the self-cultivation of an actor. There were too many accidents in this play, so it was time to end it. Therefore, Wang Lu faintly opened his mouth and his voice spread throughout the village. This altar was refined by me by collecting innate chaos tribulation thunder. It contains the origin of all things in the universe when the world was created. It can be named the Million Chaos Altar. Now that the altar has been completed, you're on your own. Then he winked at the dirty old man. The latter immediately understood and cancelled the illusion technique. Then, he used the invisibility technique to let sect leader Wang Lu ascend to immortality. The ignorant villagers who witnessed this scene from afar suddenly prostrated themselves. The invisible Wang Lu sneered, Worship the great god of 11 consecutive shocks. It's not a loss for you to worship him. Your IQ is limited, but if you're lucky, perhaps you can still be saved. Chapter 100. After Wang Lu built the primal chaos altar, the dirty old man and the others naturally settled in the Wang family village. The address chosen was Wang Lu's old house. Of course, it was also Wang Lu's intention. In fact, according to the original plan, they wanted to directly occupy Wang Dafu's house. That second local tyrant in the village had not done anything good in the past 2 years, especially that naughty brat Wang Xiaohu who colluded with bandits and caused a lot of trouble. Expropriating their property was simply justified. However, during the spiritual energy tide, he was disturbed by a fragment of the old house and almost fell short of success. This made Wang Lu interested in the old house again. Now that he thought about it, his memory was not clear when he was young. Perhaps many important clues were missed, and if he did not carefully examine them, he would not be able to find them. The last time he returned to the village, this house was occupied by an ignorant publicity envoy. When Wang Lu visited him, he almost killed the opponent on the spot. But during the whole process, even with Wang Lu's keen heavenly spirit root, he did not notice the fragment buried in the ground. Only God knows how many secrets there were here. Unfortunately, when Wang Lu led the team to settle in this old house, he could not find any more clues. However, he did not have much expectation, so he was not disappointed. Moreover, after settling in, there was still more work to do. Opening the altar and preaching. Without preaching, how could they preach? Without preaching, how could they collect the IQ tax? However, the matter of preaching could not be proposed by Wang Lu and the others. It was best to wait for the villagers to come to their door. And the villagers, of course, had the same plan. With great difficulty, they had the opportunity to let the immortals temporarily live in the village. How could they let go of this opportunity? On the day they settled in, village head Wang Qinian, along with many villagers, hurriedly came to visit. They eagerly delivered a lot of local specialties, including wine and meat. Moreover, the old village head also fully displayed his wisdom. From beginning to end, he did not say a single superfluous word. He did not mention anything about seeking immortality. The next day, a bunch of local specialties were delivered to the door. The dirty old man did not refuse and accepted all of them, which made Wang Qinian very excited. On the third day, when Wang Qinian came to visit again, the dirty old man finally opened his mouth. "Village head, what's the matter?" Without hesitation, the village chief said, "Immortal, please bestow me with an immortal fate." The dirty old man was delighted, but he pretended to be hesitant. The old village chief immediately prostrated. "Immortal elder, please bestow." "Sigh, we've received your warm hospitality these past few days, so it's only natural for us to repay you. However, regarding the immortal fate, it's not up to me to decide." As they spoke, a young man's voice was heard. "Since you've set up an altar here, there's no harm in bestowing immortal fate." The dirty old man tactfully kowtowed. "Greetings, sect leader. There's no need to stand on ceremony. I've yet to descend to the lower realms, and I've only sent a voice transmission to you, so there's no need to stand on ceremony. In 3 days, I'll be giving a lecture on the altar. As for how much you can comprehend from it, that will depend on your own luck." Once he finished speaking, he didn't make another sound. Wang Qinian looked around in surprise. Was that cult leader? The dirty old man got up and nodded. It's sect leader's voice from the immortal world. "Old village head, you're really blessed that sect leader is willing to preach here. Alas, even us, the elders of the sect, can't get many opportunities in a year. This time, it's mostly because of the altar. Although sect leader is an immortal, in the mortal world, he walks the path of the mortal world, adhering to the principle of equivalent exchange. We've occupied the surrounding spiritual energy in your village, so we'll repay you with the immortal fate." Wang Qinian's whole body trembled with joy. For a time, he couldn't speak. That so-called surrounding spiritual energy was mysterious, but in his decades of living in the village, he didn't feel anything special about it. However, this immortal fate was real. Even Wang Xiaohu, that good-for-nothing thing, after cultivating for 2 years in the Seven Stars sect, a swindler sect, he was able to set fire and draw talismans. If such a true immortal passed down an immortal method, his future was limitless, his real future was limitless. 3 days later, the small square of the Wang family village was already crowded with people. Hundreds of people from the village had gathered, waiting for the immortal to preach. Among them, there was even the shadow of Wang Fugui's family. Wang Lu didn't tell his parents about his incarnation as the Wisdom sect leader. After all, this was an absolute secret. Although his parents were close to him, they were just ordinary people, so it was inevitable that they would leak the secret. Therefore, a few days ago, Wang Lu restored his original appearance. Taking advantage of the night, he returned home. After saying a few words to his parents, he pretended to go back to the mountain to cultivate, but he was reluctant to leave. He said that this wisdom sect was worthy of its name. Although it was not as domineering as his Lingjian school, it was rare for them to be willing to walk in the mortal world, which was a rare opportunity for mortals to touch the immortal fate. However, regarding the immortal fate, he didn't need to be too demanding. In short, Wang Lu didn't want his relatives to be too cooperative when the wisdom sect started the war, but he also didn't want them to be too maverick. Fortunately, his family's perception was not bad. Even Wang Fugui's new concubine was smarter than the ordinary villagers. Soon, she understood Wang Lu's intention, and everything that happened afterward was lukewarm. Wang Qinian came to apologize, which they accepted. Later on, he invited them to listen to the Wisdom Sect's lecture, and then Wang Fugui called his family to go out. Of course, he didn't have too much expectation for the so-called immortal fate. He just wanted to watch a play, which was in sharp contrast to the villagers who were looking forward to the immortal fate with shining eyes. When the villagers had gathered, it was not long before the appointed time. On the temporarily built high platform, He Yun, Wu Feihua, Wen Bao, and the others had already stood in their positions, ready to fight. After a moment, the holy maiden also arrived. When she also stood in her position, a figure suddenly appeared on the platform. It was the sect leader Wang Lu, who had just descended from the immortal world, lifted the invisibility technique. As the director and lead actor of the whole play, Wang Lu showed an extremely professional accomplishment. As soon as he appeared, he released a powerful aura, which made the hearts of the villagers below the stage sink and involuntarily want to bow their heads. Then, Wang Lu slowly opened his mouth. Today, I will talk about the matter in the sky. Matter in the sky? Not only the villagers below the stage, even the dirty old man He Yun and the others on the stage were curious. As for the specific content of Wang Lu's lecture, even the sect's insiders didn't know. The holy maiden Feng Ling wasn't interested, He Yun and Wu Feihua didn't dare to inquire about it, but Wen Bao boldly asked, and the answer he got was that it was a spoiler. Therefore, when they heard that Wang Lu wanted to talk about the matter in the sky, they also became interested and wanted to hear what exactly was going to happen in the sky. There are immortals in the sky. The so-called matter in the sky is the matter of the immortal world, and even more so, the matter of the immortals. Some people below the stage nodded vigorously. They gathered here to listen to the matter of the immortal world and the immortals. As for the clouds and the moon in the sky, even if there were many mysteries, what did it have to do with them? Seeing that the audience's appetite had been aroused, Wang Lu smiled and began to describe the exciting scene of the immortal world. The immortal world was vast and boundless. If the 9 regions were to enter the immortal world, it would be like a drop in the ocean. In this vast immortal world, there were naturally countless immortals. The immortals were not human, they had remarkable abilities that could move mountains and fill the seas. However, the immortals in the immortal world didn't have the everlasting disputes of interests like the mortal world. The immortals lived in harmony and helped each other in cultivation. Although the immortal world was vast and magnificent, it was calm. The reason for this was that the immortal world was a land of great abundance. No matter what kind of interest demand, it could be satisfied in the immortal world. The priceless treasures in the mortal world were as common as stones in the immortal world. In such a case, it was naturally difficult to have disputes. Moreover, the immortal state of mind was extraordinary, and their lifespan was endless, so why would they care about a temporary dispute? In just a few words, Wang Lu had outlined a magnificent and vast immortal atmosphere for the people below the stage, which fascinated the villagers. Before this, their understanding of the immortal world was limited to their own imagination and the speech of the 7 Stars sect's publicity envoy. It must be said that the publicity envoy of the 7 Stars sect was also a glib talker, but the immortal world that they described was nothing more than a mountain of gold and silver, which was completely different from what Wang Lu described. However, this grandiose imagination alone was not enough to completely captivate the villagers. Therefore, Wang Lu changed the topic and began to cater to the taste of the audience by talking about the life of the immortals. That was naturally something that would make one's heart race and blood boil. Not to mention those who have been cultivating in the immortal world for hundreds of millions of years, any new immortal who ascended from the mortal world, when they set foot in the immortal world, would have 72 beautiful fairies serving them with the immortal world's jasper flowers and jade dew. From then on, they would become the exclusive property of that immortal. And when the immortals lived in the immortal world, they would have a magnificent palace and a vast and boundless territory. The power of any mortal world's emperor could not be compared to even the weakest immortal. As long as the immortal wanted to, they could change the lives of hundreds of millions of people in the immortal world. This description obviously greatly lowered the style, but the audience below the stage scratched their ears and cheeks, unable to contain their joy. Yes, this was the scene of the immortal world, this was the treatment of the immortal world. That mountain of gold and silver was too vulgar. How could it compare to the style of the 72 fairies? Before long, Wang Lu's immortal world came to an end. The people below the stage could not wait any longer. May I ask, Taoist immortal, how can we ascend to the immortal world? Can everyone cultivate to become an immortal? Taoist immortal, do you think I have the aptitude to become an immortal? Taoist immortal, everyone began to talk at once, creating an uproar. On the stage, Wang Lu made a smiling face. He didn't stop them, but he also didn't answer. A moment later, the old village head, Wang Qinian, forcefully slammed his crutch on the ground. Quiet down. The village head's prestige was still effective. Soon, the noise from the villagers subsided. The village head, Wang Qinian, respectfully bowed to Wang Lu, and then asked with a sinking voice, "May I ask, Taoist immortal, us mortals, have the possibility to become immortals?" Wang Lu smiled. Yes. Wang Qinian's heart thumped wildly. Sure enough. Although the Seven Stars sect, that devil's sect, is vicious, the theory that everyone can become an immortal is not wrong. Excited, the old village head trembled as he asked, "Then, I can also become an immortal?" Who knew that Wang Lu would shake his head? No. Wang Qinian was stunned. No, you can't. The audience also began to talk about it. Just now, didn't they say that mortals can also become immortals? Why couldn't Wang Qinian do it? Because Wang Qinian was not immortal? Wang Lu sighed. Just now, we were talking about the matter in the sky. Do you know how many layers of heaven there are? The audience looked at each other in dismay. How could they answer? So far, there are a total of 9 layers of heaven in the world. These 9 layers of heaven didn't exist when the world was created, but rather, they were transformed one by one. Transformed? Yes, transformed from the mortal world. The lower 3 layers of the 9 layers of heaven, in an era ago, were like this, the mortal world. What? This time, not only the villagers were surprised, even the wisdom sect's elders on the stage opened their mouths wide. Sect leader, you're too good at talking. Wang Lu said, after thousands of years of change in the mortal world, there is a possibility that it will ascend to the immortal world. That is the sublimation and transformation of the entire world. At that time, everyone will become an immortal, and from then on, the immortal and mortal will be transformed, enjoying eternal bliss. Therefore, I said that mortals can also become immortals. Then, it will take thousands of years? The specific number of years is not a fixed number. The sublimation of a world doesn't need the passage of time, but the diligent cultivation of thousands of people in this world. Diligent cultivation of thousands of people, this. What do you mean? Wang Lu sighed. Since ancient times, in the immortal world, when there are millions of people who ascend to the immortal world, they will be able to sublimate as a whole and integrate into the immortal world. When the time comes, even chickens and dogs will ascend to the immortal world. Mortals can also benefit from it. But, in the end, there must be millions of pioneers. Then, how many pioneers do we have in this world? So far, less than 100. Ah. Everyone was disappointed and disheartened. Wang Lu was silent for a moment. When his depressed mood gradually spread, he asked, "Do you guys give up?" Wang Qinian wryly smiled. We don't dare to deceive the Taoist immortals. Ascending to the immortal world is something that every one of us wants. But, in this case, I'm afraid it will take thousands of years, when there are millions of pioneers, for the other prisoners to become immortals. By that time, we would have already turned into a pile of rotten bones. Wang Lu said with a smile, "Why don't you want to be the pioneers?" Among millions of pioneers, someone has to do it. Otherwise, no matter how time passes, the boundless world will not be able to sublimate. If there is a mistake, it may fall into the demonic world and sink forever. Since you guys want to become immortals, why not be the pioneers? This. Can we do it? If we don't work hard and cultivate, we will never be able to. The sublimation of any world is walked step by millions of mortals. The most precious thing to a person is life. To a person, life is only once. Therefore, a person's life should be spent in such a way that when a person looks back on the past, he will not feel regret for the wasted years, nor will he feel shame for mediocrity. This way, when he dies, he can say that he gave all his life and all his energy to life's most precious cause, fighting for the sublimation of the world. Chapter 101. When his voice fell, the audience was in awe, and the silence lasted for a long time. Wang Lu smiled as he turned his head and saw several hundred pairs of vacant eyes. The matter in the sky that Wang Lu said, as well as the way for mortals to become immortals, was obviously very different from their expectation. However, compared to the Seven Stars sect's careless promise that everyone could become immortals, the world described by Wang Lu was undoubtedly more realistic and credible. Even if deep down, the villagers were more willing to believe that as long as they ate some elixirs and were enlightened by the Seven Stars sect, they could become immortals, but millions of pioneers, the immortal path was right under their feet. This kind of rhetoric could indeed make people's blood boil. However, after a moment of excitement, they had to face a real problem. Pioneers. Do they have this qualification? Even if they struggled for their whole lives, perhaps they could only become the pile of bones under the feet of the successful ones. Some people even couldn't help but feel a trace of resentment. Why did the immortal world look like what the Wisdom sect said, but not what the Seven Stars sect described? While people were digesting the matter in the sky with complex feelings, Wang Lu opened his mouth again. You guys don't want to be pioneers? Wang Qinian froze for a moment. Yes, of course we do, but, since you want to, then why do you have resentment, doubt, and feel inferior? Do you think you can't be pioneers? Wang Qinian and several other villagers looked at each other, and then the old village head bitterly smiled and replied, Sect leader, you're from the immortal world, so perhaps you don't understand the suffering of us mortals. We don't have such good aptitude and perception. If we only rely on our own cultivation, I'm afraid we'll never reach the immortal realm. Wang Lu smiled. So you don't cultivate? Wang Qinian was immediately stunned by this question. Since there's nothing, why should I cultivate? Indeed, I was born as an immortal, so I don't understand the suffering of the mortal world. However, I know that for thousands of years in 9 regions, countless cultivators have struggled on the road of immortal cultivation. Not everyone is overflowing with talent, and not everyone has a heaven-bestowed immortal fate. Moreover, even if they are heaven-bestowed geniuses, in the end, only a few of them could reach the end. Then, what have these countless cultivators been cultivating for thousands of years? While speaking, Wang Lu pointed his finger at the dirty old man He Yun. This person was born in the mortal world, he is just a cultivator, not an immortal. But, are you willing to exchange with him? Exchange with him? That's right. In exchange for his immortal arts and cultivation base. Wang Qinian stared blankly for a moment before realization dawned on him. Of course I'm willing. Although Immortal Elder is not a true immortal, the mysteriousness of the immortal technique is not something that my old body can compare to. Wang Lu smiled. Then I'll ask you again. Are you going to fix it or not? Repair, of course repair. It's just that. At this time, the dirty old man promptly interrupted them. Yes, regarding aptitude and perception, you guys are just ordinary people. However, in immortal cultivation, the most important thing is chance. And in this world, what is more worthy of being called a chance than being favored by an immortal? Hearing this, the villagers, no matter how dull they were, understood the meaning behind it, and they were immediately ecstatic. Then dare I ask sect leader, how are we going to cultivate? Wang Lu shook his head and refused to say anything. Wang Qinian doubtfully froze on the spot, not knowing why the immortal's speech ended here. The dirty old man coughed and said, It's not that sect leader doesn't want to enlighten us, but the cultivation method is a secret of our wisdom sect that has never been divulged to outsiders. It doesn't matter that sect leader is an immortal, but other people may be implicated by the heavenly Tao. Sect leader sympathizes with his subordinates, therefore, hearing that it had never been divulged to outsiders, Wang Qinian's mind immediately flashed, and he immediately prostrated himself. Sect leader, please accept us. All of us in the Wang family village are willing to join the wisdom sect and serve as your loyal dogs and horses. The dirty old man didn't know whether to laugh or cry. You, old man, are really. The wisdom sect is not a place where just anyone can join, how could you do that? At this time, Wang Lu said, these people are sincere, so it's not appropriate to just shut them out. Us building the altar here is a chance, so in addition to today's speech, we will give them another chance. These people will be regarded as active members of the wisdom sect, and we will take care of them a bit. Tomorrow, you will explain the cultivation method to them. I was born an immortal, so I'm not as familiar with the cultivation method in the mortal world as you are. He Yun bowed. Subordinate obeys. Wang Lu smiled, turned his eyes to the villagers, and then said, "Perhaps you guys are doomed to not be able to see the ascension of the boundless world, but I hope you understand that every effort you make is not in vain. The road to the immortal world is filled with countless bricks, and if you personally build one of them, it will be an eternal glory." After the speech, the crowd gradually dispersed after a long time. Although there were still a lot of confusion in their hearts, most of them couldn't hide the excitement in their hearts, and their hearts almost bloomed with joy. At the same time, the leaders of the Intelligence Revenue Service also happily held a celebration feast. Just now, the speech completely achieved the desired effect. Even the most picky holy maiden couldn't help but praise it. Ha ha ha, millions of ascenders. This setting is really awesome. It's simply domineering. How did you come up with such a nonsense setting? The director modestly waved his hand. It's just a small trick, not worth mentioning. The holy maiden was still immersed in the good show just now. She was very excited. Moreover, the last part of your speech is quite wonderful. People's life should be like this. It's hard to imagine that the one who said this is actually from the non-phase peak, Wang Lu, who is famous for his decadent lifestyle. *T, I'm destitute in the non-phase peak, and I even come to your place every day to ask for money. How could I have the capital to be decadent? In short, today you really opened people's eyes. It's like watching you walk in the immortal gathering. Come on, let's not mention that nonsense history. After laughing, the holy maiden spoke out the problem in her heart. The beginning is good, but what should we do next? Wang Lu said, do you still need to ask? Of course, it's to collect IQ tax. How? After the 7 Stars sect incident, if we want to sell spirit roots at a high price, I'm afraid that won't work. Wang Lu smiled. Therefore, we have to do the opposite. Not only we don't sell 6 harmonies powder and the like at a high price, we have to sell them at a loss price. To collect tax, we have to go the other way. What do you mean by the other way? For example, the 1,000 Spirit Palace, or the 100 Flower Garden. Little Ling Er suddenly realized. You want them to sell their labor. Yes, just like the rulers of the mortal world, when they exploit their subjects, they also coexist with taxes and corvée labor. In the future, when we popularize 6 harmonies powder and the like, even if these ignorant people can't cultivate to a high level, they can still be considered to have entered the door. They can build some simple buildings and lay a solid foundation for our Intelligence Revenue Service headquarters. Little Ling Er rolled her eyes and then said with a smile, oh right, this is what you said, what luxury office building? Yes, that's what I mean. In this way, not only we directly benefit from it, but those ignorant people can also improve their cultivation through practice. Not to mention, after the building is completed, everyone will benefit from it. It's really killing many birds with one stone. As the saying goes, even if you want to kill a pig, you must fatten it before killing it. Our Intelligence Revenue Service's job is to let those ignorant people fully move. The more they move, the fatter and stronger this pig will be, and the more we can collect tax from them. Like the 7 Stars sect, forcing people to sell their blood and kidney in exchange for money to cultivate, it's simply like killing the goose that lays the golden eggs. These words made the dirty old man and Wu Feihua somewhat uncomfortable. Although they have now renounced the dark and entered the light, listening to Wang Lu's comment on the 7 Stars sect, their hearts were still a bit embarrassed. Then the next question is, where can we find so many 6 harmonies powder? Wang Lu said, that thing has long been rotten on the street. It's not a high-end drug, as long as you have money, you can buy it. Do you have money? So, what do you think I built those 1 million primal chaos altars for? In fact, if one really wanted to buy 6 harmonies powder, they didn't even need to use the immortal cultivation world's currency, spirit stones. This kind of drug has long been popularized in the 9 regions, and was no longer the exclusive secret medicine of the Xingjing sect. Nowadays, even a small low-rank sect could easily produce 6 harmonies spirit root. Therefore, the price kept falling, and it could even be exchanged with mortal world's gold and silver. Because of this, there was room for swindlers to play their tricks. Otherwise, if they exchanged spirit stones for spirit root, and at the same time, they could only use spirit stones to exchange for gold and silver, that would be too uneconomical. However, if they wanted to purchase in bulk, it was best to use spirit stones and other things to trade. In any case, having 1 million primal chaos altars was tantamount to having an endless stream of wealth. For many low-rank sects, a qualified altar was equivalent to a spirit stone vein, which was the key to the sect's business. Speaking of which, what exactly is that strange sphere that you built today? I've never seen such an altar. As I said, it's 1 million primal chaos altars. As for the specific effect, when Wang Lu explained the effect of the altar in detail, the several people in the room couldn't help but be surprised. A growth-type altar with tide strength between 6th and 7th rank was already amazing enough. Moreover, the output height was random, and it was very likely to spit out stone slag, or even 5th rank spirit pill. This property was too against the heaven, even a high-rank altar might not be comparable to it. At least, one couldn't expect an altar to only absorb a little spiritual energy to spit out 5th rank spirit pill. This conversion rate was completely unscientific. TSK, this is really making a lot of money every day. Wang Lu, have you ever calculated, if you don't rely on spirit stones, and only rely on the tide, how long would it take to spit out? Wang Lu said, in general, I can probably play 11 times a day. The dirty old man gawked for a moment, and then suddenly got up. 11 times a day? Doesn't that mean, in a year, this altar can provide us with hundreds of thousands of spirit stones? This is equivalent to having a prefectural city. No, it's even richer than a prefectural city. In the past, when the 7 Stars sect occupied the prefectural city, their annual income was hundreds of thousands of spirit stones. However, this kind of windfall could not be repeated. Only when the city's accumulation was plundered for many years did they suddenly become rich. Listening to the dirty old man sigh, Wang Lu just laughed. That's because my luck is good. 11 times in a row, I can spit out 5th rank spirit pills. Do you think this is the 11 times in a row? Okay, tomorrow, before your speech, you can try it yourself. If you can't spit it out, you can use your private money to make up for the difference. The dirty old man inwardly said, if I have your luck, how could I end up like this? He hastily begged for mercy. Oh, in short, now that we have money, we also have people's hearts. The next step is, sect leader Wang Lu's smile turned cold. Probably some people will come knocking on our door. Chapter 102. In the eastern host prefecture of the Great Ming country in the Blue River region, on top of a barren mountain, the high-level meeting of the 7 Stars sect was quietly going on. For a 9th-rate sect that couldn't even reach the lowest threshold of the Wanxian League, it was destined that its development and business model couldn't follow the normal path. First of all, because their main business was to swindle and run a cult, in the Wanxian League territory, they were doomed to not be able to see the light of day. Even their headquarters had to be hidden in the middle of a barren mountain, otherwise, among the lower-level sects, the 7 Stars sect could be considered as thriving, and they wouldn't be in such dire straits. Secondly, because they couldn't be shown in public, many sects didn't have the necessary equipment. For example, there was a lack of necessary communication channels between the sect leader and the other high-level elders. Generally, among the sects in the Wanxian League, there were either immortal method connection, water mirror illusion screen, communication talisman, or flying sword messenger talisman. And those first-rank sects even had heavenly talismans that could break through the restriction of countless enchantment arrays to achieve absolute communication talisman, one of which could buy the entire 7 Stars sect. However, when it came to the Seven Stars sect, they could only use the mortal world's means to hold a regular meeting to communicate with the higher-ups. Although the Seven Stars sect's rank wasn't high, its business network was really complicated. The several elders in the sect usually had their own territories, so they were always busy with their own business. Thus, it was rare for them to get together. Therefore, before every meeting, in order to show the unity of the sect, they would always greet each other. But today, the atmosphere in the headquarters was a little strange. A middle-aged man in a black robe hurried up the mountain. His name was Xia Qi, and he was the youngest 6 stars elder in the 7 stars sect. A few years ago, he was personally poached by the sect leader from a Wanxian League sect. Usually, he was highly valued by the sect leader. However, this time, he encountered some trouble and accidentally forgot the time of the regular meeting. As a result, he rushed here a bit late. When he walked into the hall with a smile on his face and was about to apologize, he suddenly felt his breathing stagnate, as if a heavy burden had been added to his body. Raising his head, the middle-aged man realized that it was the sect leader's anger. Thus, without another word, he quickly walked to his seat and quietly asked the elder beside him, "What's wrong?" That elder also used secret voice sending to say, "Didn't you notice that someone is missing?" Xia Qi was stunned. "Where's Lao He?" "He, we also want to know. It's said that we've lost contact with him for a long time. He didn't come to the last regular meeting either. Missing 2 meetings without any reason, even if that sect leader is easy to talk to, you know what that means, right?" Xia Qi found it hard to believe. Old he doesn't seem like such a courageous person. Betraying the sect, is he tired of living? Although his cultivation is indeed not bad, compared to sect master, he is. Who knows what's going on? That's why the sect leader is so angry. Such a big thing happened, but everyone was kept in the dark. Xia Qi, is there no one else around old he? Apart from that mistress Wu Feihua, the others are all disciples under 3 stars, they don't have the qualifications to contact us. Xia Qi, we have the right to contact them, right? The name list of Marquis County is in the hands of old he and Feihua. Even the sect master doesn't have a copy, so how can we contact them? Xia Qi was dumbfounded. This. How could our 7 stars sect's management system be so nonsensical? It's not as formal as your myriad flower house. I'm afraid that after this, all of us will have to be more careful. While the 2 of them were chatting happily in private, they suddenly heard a muffled hum above their heads. If you've said enough, then shut up. The elders immediately quieted down. The voice in the sky was slightly angry. I've just figured out this matter. Fortunately, I know a black market merchant who happened to know that some time ago, someone bought a batch of materials and went to the Dog-Ear Mountain. To run to the Dog-Ear Mountain at this time, they really want to rebel. While speaking, the voice was like thunder, which made the elders shudder. Although the sect leader's cultivation was only at the shoot-on stage, in front of a group of Foundation establishment cultivators, the gap between the 2 stages was an insurmountable gap, so they couldn't be presumptuous. Xia Qi, I'll leave this matter to you. I don't need to tell you how to do it, right? Xia Qi's heart turned cold. Yes. 3 days later, Xia Qi arrived at the Dog-Ear Mountain in the Marquis County of the Eastern Host Prefecture. Even after 3 days, Xia Qi still couldn't forget the deep murderous intent that came from the sky before his departure. The sect leader was really angry. However, it was no wonder. Although the 7 stars sect didn't have a smooth sailing these past few years, at most, they were only suppressed by other sects, and they never had any internal trouble. Old he, in addition to being lustful, really didn't have the courage to rebel. Therefore, his betrayal hurt the sect leader the most. The sect leader suddenly felt that there was no one around him that he could trust. In the end, the 7 stars sect system was too weak. In order to hide their development, the sect adopted a single line of communication from top to bottom. As a result, when one point was broken, the whole line was paralyzed. Moreover, without the necessary monitoring, when Old He escaped, the Seven Stars sect actually didn't notice the abnormality for several days. It was also because the sect leader was quite concerned about the Wang family village's matter that when he turned around and found out that the person in charge had disappeared, he became vigilant. What the F***ck? No wonder the sect leader wanted to poach him from the 10,000 flower house. If there was no professional to rectify the situation, sooner or later, the Seven Stars sect would be killed by itself. However, from another point of view, this was the only way to reflect his value. From a Wanxian League sect to a small place like this, wasn't it because it had enough room for development? If there was an opportunity to integrate the resources, the Seven Stars sect, this lowly sect, could enter the Wanxian League. That would be like a carp leaping through the dragon's gate, his future would be limitless. In the 10,000 flower house, he was just an ordinary cultivator, but in the future, if he could become an elder of a Wanxian League sect, his status would not be ordinary. However, the rectification of the sect was a matter for later. Right now, the most important thing was to punish the traitor for the sect. Old He, oh, Old He, why are you so obsessed that you insist on rebelling? Moreover, you even chose such a place. If it's in the wilderness, I'm afraid the sect leader would be too lazy to care about you. However, the spiritual energy here is rich, the birds are singing, the flowers are fragrant, and the natural paradise is not something that you have the qualification to occupy. While sneering, Xiachi took out his own unique magical tool, Thorn Flower, from the 10,000 Flower House Refinement Workshop, a 5th-rank magical tool. Combined with the 10,000 Flower Heart Law, it was close to a high-rank magical tool. The reason why he was valued by the sect leader and came alone to deal with He Yun, Wu Feihua, and other possible enemies, was because of this 5th-rank magical tool. Secondly, although he was much younger than He Yun, his strength was much stronger. Both of them were low-level foundation establishment cultivators, but the 10,000 Flower House and the Jade Forest sect were very different. The 10,000 Flower House was an 8th-rank sect, while the Jade Forest sect was only a 9th-rank sect. The two sects' heritage was very different, and in the same stage, their comprehensive strength was 10% higher. Don't look at that 10% difference in strength was insignificant. In actual combat, 10% difference meant that the outcome could be decided within 10 moves. Coupled with his Thorn Flower, even if he had to face both He Yun and Wu Feihua at the same time, Xiachi still had the confidence to end the fight within 5 moves. Old He, this time I'm sorry. As soon as his voice fell, Xiachi's expression stiffened. His half-step forward stopped in mid-air, no longer daring to move. More than 10 meters in front of him, He Yun appeared in his line of sight with a smile on his face. Elder Xiachi, how are you going to apologize to me? Xiachi's expression didn't change, but he was secretly shocked. This old thing, how could he appear and disappear so mysteriously? I came from afar, but it's not like I didn't prepare anything. Although I just summoned my Thorn Flower, I still have the tranquil heart pendant hanging on my neck. But on second thought, this old thing had been ordered by the sect leader to manage the Marquis County 2 years ago. The Dog-Ear Mountain was rich in spiritual chi of heaven and earth, so it was not strange for him to set up some strange formations here. The old thing came from the Jade Forest sect, so he was quite famous in formations. But, what was the use of this? In addition to the Thorn Flower, he still had the 3 cards he borrowed from the sect leader. Any one of them could easily defeat a low-level foundation establishment cultivator. Old He, are you alone? Where's Feihua? Xiachi was confident, but when facing the enemy, he was always cautious. Seeing that the old thing appeared alone, Wu Feihua was naturally preparing to ambush him. This is really interesting, a high-level chi cultivating stage cultivator, even if she sneaks up on me, so what? I still have the 9 refined mysterious armor, which is indestructible, but really troublesome. What are you waiting for? The girl's voice behind him startled Xiachi, but the next moment, a violent impact on the back of his head made him blacked out. His last thought before he fainted, 9 refined mysterious armor, you're cheating me. When Xia Qi opened his eyes again, he saw He Yun's smiling face in front of him. Seeing that Xia Qi woke up, He Yun turned his head. Director, this guy woke up. Oh, pretty fast. It seems he's the best among this group of people. It's nothing, you don't understand the leader's joke. Taking advantage of the time when He Yun was talking to a stranger, Xia Qi quickly looked around. The place he was at should be some long-abandoned warehouse, but it was cleaned up. He was thrown next to a pile of junk. Unsurprisingly, all of his magical power was scattered, but his foundation was still there, so it wasn't a big deal. It was just that his body was tied by invisible threads, making him unable to move. Speaking of which, he was also a foundation establishment cultivator. His magical power could connect inside and outside of his body, so his body was far more powerful than ordinary martial artists. However, under the entanglement of these threads, he didn't even have room to struggle. In the warehouse, in addition to He Yun, there was also a young man talking to him. Looking at the way the two talked, the young man's status was obviously higher. In addition, there was also a pretty girl standing next to the young man. Her face was impatient, but her status seemed to be a bit higher than the young man. At this time, Xia Qi's magical power was scattered, so he couldn't see the other party's depth, but he was definitely not a simple character. Xia Qi was surprised for a moment, and then he inwardly understood, sure enough, there are people from other sects involved in this. Otherwise, He Yun would not have the courage to betray his sect. However, to care about a place like the Wang family village on the Dog-Ear Mountain, presumably, it's not a big sect. Moreover, which sect in the Blue River region would dare to ruin the Seven Stars sect's business? While Xia Qi was racking his brain, trying to find clues, that young man's pair of clear eyes turned toward him. Hello, I am the director of the 9 Regions Intelligence Revenue Service, the Wisdom sect leader. Welcome to our newly established big family. Next, let us work hard to collect and manage the 9 Regions Intelligence Revenue Service. Chapter 103. Therefore, please give a round of applause to welcome the newcomer. This is Xia Qi, who was originally an elder of the 7 Stars sect. He is ranked 7th among the 18 elders of the 7 Stars sect, which is a lot higher than old He. He is a first-class talent, and he will actively contribute his strength to the Intelligence Revenue Service. Please take care of him. In the courtyard, Wang Lu, with a smile on his face, patted Xia Qi's shoulder to show how much he valued him. In front of him, Little Ling, Wen Bao, He Yun, and Wu Feihua, these 4 people all had different expressions, and each had their own plans. Xia Qi's face was as stiff as a walking corpse. In the warehouse, he received Wang Lu's enthusiastic solicitation, and the result was naturally to comply. First, the 3 advantages proposed by Wang Lu were indeed exciting, and second, if he didn't comply, his life was in the other party's hands. Did he really have to die for the 7 Stars sect? If he, Xia Qi, really had that kind of unyielding and sincere loyalty, the 7 Stars sect leader wouldn't have succeeded in poaching him from the 10,000 flower house. Moreover, what was even worse was, in the warehouse, the young man named Wang Lu fed him a pitch-black pill, which was said to be an imported insect poison from the southern border, the 3 corpses brain pill. After eating it, if one was disobedient, it could make one's soul fly away, never to reincarnate. Of course, Xia Qi didn't know that Wang Lu didn't have any imported insect poison. Not to mention, how could Wang Lu, who had always been diligent and thrifty, really be willing to feed the imported insect poison to a lowly soldier? The so-called 3 corpses brain pill was nothing more than the charcoal that spurted out from the 11 consecutive zero shocks. Therefore, Xia Qi didn't hesitate. Under the eaves, he had to bow his head. In any case, as long as there's life, there's hope. Regarding Xia Qi's joining, the holy maiden Feng Ling only lamented that the Intelligence Revenue Service's motley crew was getting stronger and stronger, and that there were more and more disgusting scums. she didn't think too much about it. Originally, she came down the mountain for fun, and these past few days, she had a lot of fun playing 11 consecutive zero shocks, 11 consecutive zero shocks, and 11 consecutive zero shocks. Despite repeated defeats, her fighting spirit was high. She didn't care whether Wang Lu lived or died in the Intelligence Revenue Service. For Wen Bao, Xia Qi's arrival meant that he would have a strong man to help him with the infrastructure in the village, which greatly reduced the pressure. Thus, he welcomed him. As for the rest, with his IQ, he didn't care. As for Wu Feihua, she was secretly delighted. This Xia Qi came from an 8th rank martial school. Although his cultivation was not too high, he was still one level higher than He Yun, the old man in dire straits. Moreover, his family was rich, and he had brought many magical tools and spirit items from his sect. His appearance was also the best of the best, a typical tall, rich and handsome man. If she could hook up with him, then she wouldn't have come to the Wang family village to do hard labor for so long in vain. Only He Yun was filled with worry. First, he was worried that this pretty boy would shake his position. Now that he was the vice sect leader of the Wisdom sect, even if he didn't have monstrous power, he was still responsible for most of the development of the Wisdom sect, which gave him countless benefits. But to be honest, this was all thanks to the fact that Wang Lu didn't have anyone he could use. Although the Holy Maiden was strong, she simply didn't listen to his command. Although Wang Lu was obedient, he was so obtuse that it was heartbreaking. Among the high-level members of the Intelligence Revenue Service, only He Yun could make do with them. However, Xia Qi's position in the 7 Stars sect was higher than his. Whether it was cultivation, perception, or practical ability, all of them were stronger than his, so the threat was really too big. Secondly, there was a deeper layer of worry. Wang Lu's way of doing things was so unscrupulous, it was impossible for the 7 Stars sect to not have any reaction. Xia Qi was treated as one of the core members of the sect. The sect leader even had the intention to train him to be the vice sect leader or even the sect leader's successor. If he went missing, at most, it would make people lament that the 7 Stars sect system was not perfect enough. However, if Xia Qi went missing, even defected, the sect leader would definitely fall out with him. And then what? The 7 Stars sect leader would lead a group of elders to kill him? If they fought, they probably wouldn't be able to win. No matter how powerful Wang Lu was, it was impossible for him to fight against a Shidon stage cultivator. Even if the Holy Maiden factor was taken into account, against more than a dozen Foundation establishment elders, his odds of winning were very slim. Of course, Wang Lu didn't really need to fight with the 7 Stars sect. At the critical moment, if he showed the sign of the Lingjian school, the 7 Stars sect naturally could only kneel and lick his boots. However, if he unscrupulously revealed his trump card, the next thing that awaited him would be the disciplinary elder's lightning strike. It would still be a dead end. Thinking to this, the dirty old man couldn't help but become nervous. Seeing that Wang Lu was jubilantly assigning tasks to Xia Qi, he couldn't help but give the opposite party a meaningful glance. He still couldn't use the primordial spirit sound transmission technique, and his secret sound transmission technique probably wouldn't be able to hide from Xia Qi. Unfortunately, Wang Lu acted as if he didn't see it. After he finished his nonsense, he clapped his hands. Okay, that's all for today. Everyone, disperse. The dirty old man still wanted to say something, but Wang Lu has already begun to close the door. This was a very clear eviction order. He could only helplessly pull Wu Feihua and prepared to leave. However, he found out that Wu Feihua's pair of charming eyes were all on Xia Qi's body, which made him seethe with anger. Hey, you're not doing this right? When everyone had dispersed, a holy maiden suddenly said so. Wang Lu asked with interest, why not? Don't you think you're playing a bit unscrupulously? This is not only slapping the 7 Stars sect's face, but also throwing *T on their face. There's no room for mediation. I'm not worried that you'll lose to a mere 7 Stars sect, but if you make this matter big, your experiential learning will end early. Wang Lu nodded. It's rare that Sister Ling is willing to seriously use your brain to think. Are you going to get another 11 consecutive 0 today? Sooner or later, I will get it, don't look down on me. At this time, Wang Lu, who was sitting, turned around and happened to catch a glimpse of little Ling Er's chest. He couldn't help but curl his lips. Whether it's flat or not, it's not for other people to see. Oh my God, you really hit me? Crawling up from the ground, Wang Lu patted the dust and said, "What you just said is right. If I don't take care of it, tomorrow, I'll probably have to prepare for a big battle with the Seven Stars sect, and then I won't be able to play anymore. However, if you can think of it, how could I not think of it? Rest assured, the future trouble has already been eliminated, so they simply can't come." Little Ling Er suddenly became curious. Can't come? Oh, a group of crows who can't even take care of themselves, what qualification do they have to find trouble with us? However, we have to seize the time. Taking advantage of this rare strategic opportunity, we must spread the wisdom sect as fast as possible. I also want to take this opportunity to quickly improve my cultivation. When the sect scale and my cultivation have been raised, even if the Seven Stars sect wants to find trouble with us, they would have to think twice. At that time, we have the initiative in our hands, and there's nothing to worry about. Listening to Wang Lu's self-satisfied words, Feng Ling hastily interrupted him. Hey, what do you mean by can't even take care of themselves? Wang Lu smiled. Actually, it's nothing. 2 days ago, I wrote a letter, and now, it has probably been delivered to the appropriate location, so there should be a response. Letter, who is it for? The Wanxian League's Blue River Region Office, the Hall of Mortal Reason. What's that? It's a department that specializes in dealing with mortal affairs. Due to the particularity of the Blue River region, in short, it's a bunch of pain-in-the-ass cultivators. However, if you look deeper into it, their duty is to ensure that the order of the mortal world within their jurisdiction is not subject to unreasonable external interference. Unreasonable external interference refers to, for example, Jifeng's conduct in the White Moon Country is a typical example. This department is mainly in charge of cultivators' misdeeds in the mortal world. Actually, it's not unusual for the immortal cultivation world to interfere with the mortal world. As long as it's approved by the Wanxian League, it's reasonable for you to openly manipulate a country's royal family. However, if the Wanxian League doesn't allow it, even if you randomly instruct a few mortal children, they could still find trouble with you. And without a doubt, the Seven Stars sect couldn't get the Wanxian League's permission. Little Ling Er's mind wandered for a while before she realized what exactly Wang Lu was trying to say by beating around the bush. The young girl's eyes widened, and she incredulously asked, You, this cult sect leader, actually wrote a report letter. Wang Lu righteously and sternly said, reporting a cult is everyone's responsibility. Then why don't you report yourself first? This heroine, please respect our wisdom sect's lofty ideal. We are essentially different from a cult. Yes, how could a common cult be fooled like you? Thank you, it's rare to hear you praise me. Wrangling with Wang Lu was indeed a tiresome task. Feng Ling painfully rubbed her head. According to your words, they're just a group of idle people waiting to die. Would they go to war just because of your letter? It's not like they're a big target, they're just a small sect. Thank you for your real name report. If a report letter from one of the 5 unique successor disciples can't make them move, then don't expect this department to have a budget and staff. What the? You're using your real name. Tisk, it's an open and above-board thing, is there a need to cover it up? Seeing injustice on the road, I'll write to help. Please call me little reporting expert. You damned informant, in a certain barren mountain in the Eastern Wei prefecture of the Great Ming country in the Blue River region, the Seven Stars sect held an emergency meeting of the elders. Most of the participating elders had been informed of the recent jaw-dropping event. Xia Qi defected. For most of the elders, this was an inconceivable matter. Xia Qi was a high-end talent that the sect leader personally poached from the 10,000 Flower House. Just as he entered the sect, he was already ranked in the upper middle of the elders. However, this was because he was too young and his cultivation was too weak. His low-level foundation establishment stage cultivation was really difficult to be compared to the several high-level foundation establishment stage elders. And his actual influence was second only to the several elders who had been with the sect leader for the longest time. He was the 7 stars sect star of hope. The sect's future development was on him, and the resources allocated to him were also the most. How could he just defected like that? The sect leader convened an emergency meeting to deal with this matter. However, when they entered the hall, the elders felt that the air was somewhat cold, sticky, and slightly damp, which was extremely uncomfortable. This seemed to mean that the sect leader's mood was very bad. Moreover, it was the kind of helpless and powerless bad feeling. What exactly happened? Fortunately, the answer to the mystery was soon revealed. When almost all the elders had arrived, the sect leader's voice came from the air. The people from the Wuxia League Hall of Mortal Reason have come to our door. Chapter 104. Hall of Mortal Reason. Unlike a certain aloof holy maiden lady boss, the people of the 7 Stars sect were not unfamiliar with this name. Whether they were willing or not, a sect like the 7 Stars sect would inevitably have to deal with the Hall of Mortal Reason. That group of Wuxia League cultivators bullied the weak and feared the strong. They were greedy and insatiable. They turned a blind eye to the 1,000 Spirits sect of the White Moon Country, which previously had the support of the Xingjing sect. However, for the 7 Stars sect, from time to time, they would show their real ability to suppress this group of loose cultivators until they cried for their mom and dad. The 7 Stars sect was also well aware of this truth, or perhaps it could be said that they were deeply hurt by it. A few years ago, they occupied a prefectural city in the Great Ming country. At that time, they lived a life of luxury. However, not long after, the people from the Hall of Mortal Reason came to kill them. Facing 2 Shudan stage cultivators and more than 10 Foundation establishment cultivators, the 7 Stars sect very unyieldingly chose to kneel down and lick their boots. They spat out 60 to 70% of the benefits, and only then did they reluctantly send them back. After that, they learned from this painful experience and actively communicated with the cultivators from the Hall of Mortal Reason, and regularly delivered benefits to them. This completely resolved the crisis and truly stabilized their foundation. However, unexpectedly, the Hall of Mortal Reason, which they thought had been pacified, actually came to stir up trouble again. Did all those spirit stones and spiritual objects from the past few years feed the dogs? Sect leader, what the hell is going on? The sect leader was also full of depression. The Hall of Mortal Reason was looking for trouble, which was reluctantly told to him by a low-level cultivator informant, but the specific reason was unclear. In the past few years, he could only bribe a few officers in the Hall of Mortal Reason, but when it came to the management level, it was beyond his reach. Now that he encountered this problem, he was completely clueless. Thus, he called for a meeting with the elders to discuss countermeasures. However, even the sect leader had no idea, what else could the others do? After discussing for the whole morning, the final result was nothing more than the sect leader personally visiting the Wang family village with a variety of treasures, hoping that they could spend money to solve this disaster. As for the Wang family village in the Dog-Ear Mountain, deal with your sister. The heavenly tribulation was about to fall. Who would have the mind to care about the people in the Dog-Ear Mountain? This trip lasted for a month, during which, needless to say, they spent money like flowing water. Several high-level managers of the 7 Stars sect often treated them to drinks, and they drank until their jade mansions were shaken. Finally, they managed to stabilize the matter. Fortunately, in the past few years, the 7 Stars sect had some connections in the Hall of Mortal Reason, thus, they were able to hold this month's banquet. If it were any other sect, even if they had spirit stones and spirit wine, they still wouldn't have the means to invite people to drink. However, even so, it still took them a whole month to invite the division leader of the Hall of Mortal Reason to come forward and send him a gift bag of tens of thousands of spirit stones. Only then did the matter settle down. In addition to this, the harvest was that they finally figured out the culprit behind the scenes. Actually, it couldn't be said to be a culprit. Who knew which brat was so bored that he wrote a report letter to the Hall of Mortal Reason, reporting the existence of an improper cult movement in the Great Ming country of the Blue River region. Every year, the Hall of Mortal Reason would receive at least 800 of this kind of report letter. Usually, they would treat it as waste paper and burn it for fun. However, they couldn't ignore this one, because the one who wrote the letter was a successor disciple of one of the 5 uniques of the Wuxia League. What's more, the chaos that happened in Blue River region a few months ago had greatly implicated the Hall of Mortal Reason of the Union of 10,000 Immortals. Both the hall leader and the deputy hall leader were punished, and since then, their nerves had become particularly sensitive. At that time, the Thousand Spirits sect was single-handedly destroyed by a spirit sword sect elder in the White Moon country, and the culprit behind the scenes, Daoist Master Jifeng, came to the White Moon country to investigate the matter. After his defeat, he was punished by being deprived of his body and tortured in animal form for 10 years. These inside stories were not publicized by the Wuxia League. However, the Xingjing sect's attitude toward the Lingjian school had a tremendous change. Especially in the Blue River region, the Wuxia League could ignore the other sects, but they could not ignore the voice from the Lingjian school. Thus, there were such twists and turns. Fortunately, it was just a report letter from a disciple, and there was no follow-up, so they could barely digest it. However, when they came back from the Hall of Mortal Reason, whether it was the sect leader or the several elders, all of them felt as if they had shed a layer of skin. While they were exhausted, naturally, they vented their anger on the Seven Stars sect. Although the Seven Stars sect had no way to deal with the Hall of Mortal Reason, it was time to clean up a certain group of people who had been holed up in the Dog Ear Mountain for a month. However, just as the sect leader was about to take a short break and prepare to leave the mountain, a new trouble came. What, mysterious sky mansion? Are you kidding me? What do we have to do with them? Usually, we can't even enter their door. What? They say we are involved in illegal trade, including mass destruction poison? Is there any justice in this? How could a poor sect like us have mass destruction poison? But isn't their mysterious sky mansion often auctioning top-rank poisonous insect poison? They claim that one of them can destroy a small country, so why are they investigating us? Although they roared, the mysterious sky mansion's background was countless times more powerful than the Hall of Mortal Reason. Although it was just a small branch of the mysterious sky mansion, its strength was enough to crush the Seven Stars sect 100 times over. For this kind of unexpected disaster, the sect leader was helpless. He had to summon the elders' assembly again, and then, after some discussion, he brought several elders with spirit wine and spirit stones to the Seven Stars sect for public relations. This trip lasted for half a month. When they came back, they felt like they had shed a layer of skin. Among them, the most unlucky elder, because of excessive drinking, suffered a demotion in cultivation level, which was too horrible to look at. At this time, the Seven Stars sect didn't even have the strength to be angry. They just subconsciously remembered that there was still a disaster in the Dog Ear Mountain. When he was about to open his mouth to discuss this issue, the sect leader's heart trembled, and an ominous premonition welled up in his heart. Damn, it can't be. Shaking his head, the sect leader decided not to believe it, so he said, "The problem in the Dog Ear Mountain." Before his voice fell, an elder breathlessly ran in. Reporting to the sect leader, "The people from the Wuxia League are here again. F***CK, what happened this time? They said that our Seven Stars sect is involved in the rough development, which seriously damaged the natural environment of the Blue River region. What the F***CK? What kind of bullsh**T reason is that, and they still have the nerve to say it? The Wuxia League occupied the spirit vein and violently developed it, causing the mountain to collapse and the ground to sink, but they didn't even care about it, and now they came to find trouble with us." The sect leader was so angry that he wished he could pull out his beard and hair to show his indignation. Unfortunately, for a low-class sect like the Seven Stars sect, indignation was not worth much. After venting his anger in the hall for a while, the sect leader could only sigh, got up, and went out to deal with it. In this way, time once again slipped away. When the Seven Stars sect finally solved all the problems, the entire upper echelon had been tossed and out of breath. After a few days, they finally remembered that there was still a big problem in the Dog-Ear Mountain that needed to be solved. Damn, I wonder how those two dog thieves He Yun and Xia Qi are doing now. What exactly happened in the Dog-Ear Mountain? In fact, in the past 3 months, the Dog-Ear Mountain could be said to have been turned upside down. Wang Lu did not hesitate to turn himself into a whistleblower in order to gain 3 months of development time for the Wisdom Sect. In the Dog-Ear Mountain, and even in the surrounding areas of the Great Ming country, the biggest obstacle was the Seven Stars sect. As long as the Seven Stars sect didn't make a move, the Wisdom sect's development would be smooth. And in these 3 months, without other people's harassment, the Wisdom sect's development was indeed unusually rapid, like a wildfire that could not be stopped. The first was the crazy expansion of the sect. With Wang Lu's successful performance in the Wang family village, Xia Qi, the dirty old man, and Wu Feihua, these 3 people were not fools. They imitated him and held a sermon in several villages around the Dog-Ear Mountain, rapidly accumulating a large number of believers. With the spreading effect of the believers, the influence of the sect snowballed, and it had already begun to radiate its influence to the surrounding counties. In the Seven Stars sect's era, the remote villages and counties didn't have much development value. However, for the Wisdom sect, who had diversified their tax collection, no one had no development value. Even if they didn't have money, at least they had the body, the labor force, and the kidney. However, only the Wisdom sect could dig out this part of value. In these 3 months, the Wisdom sect had absorbed more than 10,000 believers, but their biggest reliance was not Wang Lu's advanced theory of millions of forerunners, nor was it the primal chaos altar that often sprayed out expensive spiritual objects. The Wisdom sect's real advantage lay in its ability to dig out the potential of the vast common people. In these 3 months of development, among the tens of thousands of believers, there were already more than 500 people who succeeded. The proportions seemed small, but they were scattered among dozens of villages, and each village had at least a few successful examples. This was more convincing than any slogan or theory, making the believers dead set. In the past, the Seven Stars sect played all kinds of tricks among the common people, but the effect was nothing more than this. However, it was impossible for them to have this kind of rapid development momentum. Moreover, once the scam was exposed, the believers would naturally be lost. As for how the Wisdom sect achieved such a miraculous development, there were only 2 reasons. First, by importing a large number of 6 Harmonies powder and spirit root development pills, and then widely spreading them so that everyone would have the opportunity to cultivate. This step could be said to be difficult, but with the primal chaos altar, its stable income was enough to pay for this cost. After all, 6 Harmonies powder was not an expensive medicine. As long as they could get through the supply chain, the rest was just a matter of negotiating the price. And it just so happened that Xia Qi had several resources that he could use. The second was to turn the opportunity to cultivate into tangible results, which was also the most difficult step. For ordinary people, 6 Harmonies powder could only be said to open a crack in the immortal cultivation door. In fact, even if they cultivated for more than 10 years, they still might not be able to draw the spiritual energy into their body. The effect was close to nothing. The Seven Stars sect had been deceiving people for many years, but they never had a breakthrough in this aspect. Even when they occasionally met a distinguished guest, they would spend a lot of money to use a higher-grade artificial spirit root, but often, they still couldn't cultivate. However, in the hands of Wang Lu, even the 6 Harmonies spirit root shone with unparalleled vitality, which made a group of mountain village barbarians who wanted perception but didn't have it, who wanted opportunity but didn't have it. The trick was actually very simple. Heaven Burning Blood Technique. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.